い全国大会目指して頑張ってみたいかあの若い頃の気持ちを取り戻せたら良いのにもしよろしければ行きましょうか願いが叶う街に札幌時間楽しい年に行くもしかして知ってるのやのととすがり出会う山のって答えそうかもしれない知りて素晴らしいものそれは救いの旅路だ我々のはすべてをいてこれは愛の告白願って忘れましょう成長の苦悩世界を恋になり雨のアウハウと叫んで気合い入れよう願いの願うの今日の京都ベケーション京
Hello and welcome to Japanimation Station's Kyoto Vacation, an anime podcast brought to you by the folks at the Weekly Stuff Podcast. I'm Sean Chapman.
And I'm Jonathan Lack.
And we are here to kick back, relax, and talk about some anime this week on the show. We are bringing you a special new part 5 of our Kyoto Vacation, the part that they didn't want you to hear, because it was not part of our original plan. But we have had so much fun watching everything Kyoto Animation we can get our hands on that we said, screw it, let's do even more. So welcome to part 5. This is Kyoto Animation's Splendid Isolation, where everything we're watching in this part of our Kyoto Vacation is looking at the transition in Kyoto Animation's business model from going to adapting existing source material in the world of light novels, manga, and video games, and instead them becoming a fully self-sufficient entity who the majority of their work post-Hyoka is either original anime or adapting light novels that they also helped publish and thus own the rights to. So it is a fascinating point in their history and a kind of shift in their business model, and that's why I'm making a reference to 19th century British foreign policy by calling it Kyoto Animation's Splendid Isolation. So we're watching a lot of stuff, even more stuff than we originally planned on this special part because of how much Jonathan has enjoyed what we're talking about today. We are talking about Love, Chuunibyo and Other Delusions, or Chuunibyo Demo Koi ga Shitai, the first season of that show, which aired in 2012. And a fantastic show. This is actually the third time I've watched it because I watched it when it originally came out. I rewatched it when season 2 happened, and but that was like 10 years ago. So this was a very nostalgic show for me to watch because it feels very, compared to Hyoka, which is very sort of like weird and kind of outside, I think, the trends of anime. Chuunibyo Demo Koi ga Shitai, or Love, Chuunibyo and Other Delusions, feels so of its time in a very good way, in a very like early 2010s before isekai took over the world. You got a lot of shows that were these kinds of romance high school shows that played around with these sort of slight fantasy adjacent themes, and this is one of the best of all of those. And I'm very, very excited to talk about it today.
I am too. This is a show that snuck up on me because, one, I had never heard of it until you mentioned it for the podcast as one that we should add to the lineup. And I thought it looked interesting. I knew so little about it, Sean, that in the first episode of this, the Eyecatch Break comes when Rika lifts up the eye patch and her eye shines. And I was genuinely at that point still unsure, is this a show about a girl who's really silly, or is this a show with fantasy elements? It's Kyoto Animation. It could go either way, right? Like, this could be Haruhi-esque and she actually has magical powers. I had no idea. I didn't read the back of the Blu-ray box. I didn't look into it. And then we come back from the Eyecatch Break, and it's a silly contact that she has put in, and then I'm like, okay, I think I get what this show is a little bit more now. And I think the show in its first couple episodes is just a spectacularly funny comedy. and a little bit more minor key than some other things we've watched. And then I think it starts ramping up. And I think the second half, the last 6 episodes, are 6 of the best episodes we've talked about this season. It's just an incredible run of episodes. And I really love this show, to the point that, both because I loved it and because thematically it dovetails with this thing I had written for my dissertation. Yesterday, I spent a few hours going back into this section that'll be in the intro to the dissertation, and I was kind of not rewriting it. I was heavily revising it, though, to include Love, Chuunibyo, and Other Delusions as part of the analysis and becoming kind of a structuring metaphor for that section. And I'll talk about that more later today, probably, because I think it's interesting. But because of that, now, in the current draft, this is the first anime that gets substantively discussed in my dissertation. It's the first one. Not on like there's like a qualitative ranking or anything. It's just that's where it kind of went in the flow of things I was talking about. And that amuses me greatly. I think I texted you the other night, Sean, that I had added 2 paragraphs. It's way more than that now. It weaves through this is like a 10-page section, and it basically now weaves through at the beginning, the end, and in the middle a little bit. And it honestly, that section I was very unsure of, that I felt like it was missing something. And then I saw this show, and that's what this was missing. And so, yeah, this has a significant presence in my PhD dissertation now, Sean. I cannot stop myself adding things we watch on this show into my doctoral work. There we go.
There we go. I mean, yeah, that's awesome because, yeah, I mean, I've always really enjoyed this show. Now, something that's going to be interesting is we have added onto the docket. Originally, we were not planning to do the season 2 in the movie because we already added 4 episodes onto a very, very long season of Japanimation Station. And so I was like, well, we could just do season 1 and that gets the idea across. And then Jonathan texted me yesterday, was like, can we just do all of it? I'm like, well, sure. Yeah, we can do all of it. So we are going to do season 2, and the movie Take On Me will all be in this season as well. We'll tackle those in kind of chronological order. So we're not going to do season 2 next. We'll get to that when we get to 2014. But I had a fairly mixed feelings on season 2 when it originally aired. So I have never come back to this show, even though I really enjoyed it at the time. And it was fun rewatching it because it just kind of reminded me how good it is. And I think I had forgotten specifically about how masterful the pacing of this show is, and the kind of thing you just laid out, where early on it's very much a comedy, where the first few episodes are just purely about the goofs and watching these silly characters and having Yuta, the main character, just, be the straight man amongst all these weird characters you meet one after the other, and playing off of this whole Chuunibyo theme, which we'll talk about where that term comes from and what it kind of really means. But then around the midpoint where you have that 2-part episode where during summer vacation, it starts to shift that tone. And then the second half, it's like a pure love story. And it's not that it stops being funny. It still has some good jokes. But I think that shift is so well done. And it really is, it is a fantastic show. I don't think I would put it quite on the same level as our Haruhi, K-On, Clannad. Like, it's not that sort of triple mega S tier or whatever you have to rate it at, but it's closer to that tier than I remembered.
It's closer to that tier, and I also think it's important to say I don't think it's aspiring to be something quite like that. I will say, though, this is another Tatsuya Ishihara one, and I do think if I had to point to any set of episodes to show the sheer range Tatsuya Ishihara has as a director, it would be this. Because, it goes from comedy that is, in some points, as out there as Nichijou, and it gets to some emotional stuff that is as heavy as some of the stuff in the key shows, like Clannad and Air. I mean, it's not as dark as those, but, it is that kind of straightforwardly dramatic and romantic. And just that, to me, kind of defines his whole directorial ability set, is that incredible, tonal range, and this show is I don't think anyone else could have pulled that off quite the way he and this team did.
Yeah. And he also, I think this is a good show to just sort of for him in order to in the sense of looking at sort of his style and stuff, because he doesn't actually direct himself any of the episodes. He does storyboards for the first 2. But I think it is just like, that's part of his kind of flexibility as a director. I think it comes across here. Like, he can manage so many different kinds of things. Obviously, he's also a fantastic episode director when he does it. But this does remind me a little bit of the key shows in that way, of where you're not feeling his presence necessarily on that episode to episode basis. It's the overall direction of the show, and it's like that structure of the season. It definitely, watching this, made me think about Clannad season 1 specifically a fair amount, because I feel like this is the most similar thing we've had to Clannad since we finished that first part of the Kyoto Vacation.
Because Clannad is also one that it's easy to forget, but is a very, very funny show. Yes. And because season 1 never gets to the super dark stuff of season 2, it has a similar, I think, kind of journey of comedy to romantic comedy in a really beautiful way. And the romantic comedy also being very dramatic. So, yeah, I think this is an incredible show. And it's great. And Sean's notes are awash in GIFs he has just pasted in from the theme song, because this is another show that just has great, weird, cycled animation in the theme songs. Because Tatsuya Ishihara is also a massive fucking weirdo. And we get that in his theme songs.
I had forgotten about the gif of Nika doing the finger spin dance, and then I watched the opening, I'm like, oh, right. This is because that went very viral amongst anime people in the early 2010s. It's like, yeah, that's right. This is like one of the most gifable anime of all time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so let's get into a little bit of the history of Love, Chuunibyo, and Other Delusions. And really where we have to start is starting with kind of setting up what this whole section of our podcast is going to be about, which is really the Kyoto Animation Awards, because this is where KyoAni starts to make some very interesting moves in how they shift their business. So on October 2nd, 2009, so we're dialing back the clock right now to a little bit after season 2 of Haruhi is when this happens, Kyoto Animation announces on their website that they're seeking entries into a competition that they call the Kyoto Animation Taisho or Kyoto Animation Awards. And the announcement on their homepage read, I've translated this. At this time, we here at Kyoto Animation are inviting from far and wide submissions for works of entertainment aimed at a broad audience. The genre can be sci-fi, action, fantasy, school dramas, etc., whatever you have. To those overflowing with a creative urge which says, I want to compete with this work, let's build the next era of entertainment together. So they put out this contest. The details of the contest for the original one was that grand prize winners would receive 30,000 yen. That later got bumped up to 100,000 yen. And then honorable mentions or encouragement awards. Honorable mention feels like a weird way to actually translate it, because the way these contests works feels a little bit different than we have in like the English language sphere. But those would receive 10,000 yen. And just to like give context about what I mean that like honorable mentions is weird, the only thing across all the times they have done the Kyoto Animation Awards that have actually won the grand prize is Violet Evergarden. So it's not like a thing where every year something wins the grand prize. It's more that like, hey, anything we think is like worthy gets this sort of like second tier award. And then if there's something that really is the like, holy shit, then that gets the grand prize award. But it's only if something reaches that threshold does it get there. And when we get to Violet Evergarden, it will probably become clear why that is the thing that gets the grand prize award.
Is this just voted on internally at KyoAni? Was there any kind of voting system?
Yes, so the submissions are evaluated by a committee that is made up of Kyoto Animation staff. So it's just KyoAni people who read through the submissions, and like there's like an internal group of KyoAni people who go through and were evaluating them.
Okay.
There were 3 categories for submission. There were novels, manga, and then scenarios. Scenarios meaning like you don't necessarily have written the whole, like a whole book, but you kind of come up with, here's like the general story and characters and stuff like that. So that was like, and there were like 3 different areas where you'd submit those to. Submissions were accepted from all ages, and they also would accept them from people who are professionals in the industry or amateurs, although generally the people who submitted were, as you would expect, were amateurs who were like, you know, trying to get their novels published and stuff like that. And for the original one, the submissions closed on January 15th, 2010. So that kind of thing gives you a sense of like the original sort of setup for this contest was fairly small scale. And it was interesting when I was researching it, because I feel like the Kyoto Animation Awards are fairly well known now. But if you go back at the time, it wasn't the thing that was like hugely covered. It wasn't like, oh, every anime press is going like, oh, we got to get our articles out about the Kyoto Animation Awards. It was like a small scale little contest they announced on their website, and like nobody else wrote about it. Like I went on Google and like restricted my search results to just like 2009 to 2011 ish. And in that period, all the results basically are just different things on the Kyoto Animation website. And most of those web pages are also don't exist and are just on the Internet Archive, or you have to, I had to do a lot of playing with the like HTML file and like the link at the top of the page and put in different numbers to get like, oh, here's a part of their website that you can still access, but you can't get through normal links. So, this contest was not originally touted as being this huge, big deal. But the most enticing thing about the contest, and it's a small little like thing on the original webpage, which just says works which are viewed favorably may be adapted to animation by Kyoto Animation. So that was like sort of part of the idea originally was, and it still is, that like, hey, if your thing is really good, we might like pick it up and then turn it into the next KyoAni show. And so this competition is what forms the foundation for this big dramatic shift we're talking about in Kyoto Animation's projects. So by holding this contest, KyoAni is able to remove themselves from the need to work with separate publishing companies like Kadokawa, which has been like the number one company they've worked a lot with, to supply properties to adapt. KyoAni does still past this point adapt to other things. Like it's not like they stopped doing that entirely. We're going to talk about multiple stuff that they adapt from existing light novels and manga in some of our later episodes, but the kind of the core of their business really feels like it shifts to this. And they're still putting out like their most recent show, Tsurune, is a light novel produced through this method. So it's still kind of like the core of their business. And they're all, since they published them, they own the IPs. And so that's really kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about Splendid Isolation, is this program. For the original... Is there
anything,
yeah.
I guess I'm just wondering, comparable with other studios, like having this level of kind of independence in... they are technically adapting stuff, but it's stuff that they own because of this setup.
I'm not aware of any animation studios that do this. Obviously, you've got like the really big companies like Sunrise that will develop their own IPs, like Gundam and Love Live and stuff like that. But that's a slightly different thing. There might be, but I'm not aware of like, Mappa, for instance, it does not do this. You know, like the other like big kind of anime companies you think of that aren't necessarily the like 50-year-old titans of the industry. No, obviously you have like Kadokawa and like manga and light novel publishing companies hold contests like this all the time.
Right.
But for an animation company, no, not really.
Well, because that's what's notable. I mean, there's, companies like Toei you think of as having control over those projects, but they don't to some degree. Like One Piece is owned by Shueisha. Right?
Yes.
And they are just licensed. Now, they've been licensing it for 3 decades, but they license One Piece to make the anime. And that is just so standard. It is really interesting to hear about this kind of setup. And it's just a very natural part of the arc that you've been discussing since episode 1 of this podcast, which was all about KyoAni going from working with other companies to increasing levels of independence.
Yes.
And this is the most independent they've ever been.
Yes, that they are totally self-sufficient. I mean, that's why I made that Splendid Isolation reference, is that it is like that idea of the British Empire in the 19th century, which is where that term comes from, which is that like, oh, we don't need the continent. Like, we don't need those people. We are fine on our island, and we're totally self-sufficient. That is really what KyoAni kind of has become at this point. So with that original contest, there were 5 novels and 6 scenarios, which were given the Encouragement Award for the first round. Nothing, again, was rewarded the grand prize. And then amongst those was a light novel written by a new author not named, but with a pseudonym of Toriko. And that novel was called Chuunibyo Demo Koi ga Shitai, or Love Chuunibyo and Other Delusions, as we call it now in English. In December 2010, it was announced that Chuunibyo would be published by Kyoto Animation with their newly established publishing label, KA Esma Bunko, that KA standing for Kyoto Animation. And the first volume of Love Chuunibyo and Other Delusions was published on June 1st, 2011, and was KA Esma Bunko's first product. So this is like the flagship for this weird kind of boutique light novel label that Kyoto Animation also runs. So they like own the IP, they publish the books, and then eventually they make the anime. So let's talk about how this book turns into an anime. So Toriko wrote 4 novels overall of the light novels, if we're looking at the whole life of it from 2012 to 2017. The novels have decent reviews, but aren't necessarily like, this is not Haruhi or something where the light novels are held up as like one of the best ever, or something like that. It is also interesting to me and kind of notable that Kei Esma Bunko doesn't publish on like Kindle or Bookwalker, so I was not able to get copies. Like if you lived in Japan, it would be trivially easy to get this book, but there are no easily accessible ebooks that you can get from the major like labels outside of Japan. So I was kind of bummed that I couldn't read any of it. The author is extremely private, Toriko. There's like almost nothing really known about them publicly. They have published one novel post Chuunibyo, which is 2022's Oshi no Ninchi ga Hoshino Agenai, which I'm not even going to bother trying to translate that title. But it's just another book. The illustrations for the light novel were done by Tanakamori Yokota under the pen name Known, and quote unquote Known was an animator at KyoAni at the time. He eventually has gone on to work for other people, and really he mostly is an illustrator now, based on what I saw of his credits. He does tons of illustrations for other light novels. KyoAni announced the plans to adapt Chuunibyo into a TV anime on December 28th, 2011, and the show aired for 12 episodes from October to December 2012 with an OVA that released on the Blu-ray release on June 2013 that included the shorts, the Chuunibyo Demo Koi ga Shitai light shorts, that they got their own little separate Blu-ray release. The series proved quite popular. The first Blu-ray volume sold over 15,000 copies, so we're not talking a K-owned level hit, but that's over twice really what Hyoka got on average, so this is like a solid, like, proper hit. The series also became semi-viral online with lots of anime music videos and stuff, both in the English sphere and in Japan, especially using different clips from the show, especially Rika's finger twirl, which became like a big meme in 2012 to like 14 or so. To accompany the series, KyoAni did create that series of 6 shorts, the light shorts, which debuted originally through streaming on places like YouTube. All those shorts are storyboarded and directed by Otorika, and I had never originally seen those, but they are on the Blu-ray, and they're very good. We'll talk about them a little bit at the end, I think, because they are pretty fun.
Because they're collected on the Blu-ray effectively as just an extra episode, and kind of reminded me of the Lucky Star OVA that is just a collection of short stories. And it's like that. It's a really, really good version of that kind of thing. And Otorika also directed my favorite episode of the show. So good work on this one.
Yes, for sure. So the series goes on to get a recap movie of season 1, which is like nominally from Rika's perspective. I have not seen it, so I do not know how different it is, but we will talk about it because it got that. A second season in 2014 and a finale movie called Take On Me in 2018, and we will be covering those. We'll be hitting them in chronological order with the other stuff, so we will take a look at all that as well. One thing, though, that is really, I think, significant when we're thinking about Chuunibyo Demo Koi ga Shitai relative to the other adaptations we've seen is that when we're talking about the Kyoto Animation published light novels, we're thinking about a different thing in terms of adaptation. So this is a much more sweeping, changed kind of adaptation. It is not the super faithful thing. So far, everything we've looked at, like Haruhi, K-On!, Lucky Star, Nichijou, the key games, they have been extremely faithful in how they adapted those, right? Like I've read almost everything that they have done for Haruhi in those novels, and it's like outside of a couple of very specific things, and obviously Endless 8 being kind of a weird experiment, they are extremely faithful to those books and how they're written, and that's been true of everything I've seen from their other adaptations. They'll obviously make changes and are smart in how they adapt, but they don't make huge, massive additions or cut huge chunks of it. This is kind of a different thing. So there are massive changes, which you also have to keep in mind that this show is only adapting the first light novel, or this season is only adapting the first light novel. The main stuff from season 2 is adapting the second volume of the light novel. So, if you think about like the Haruhi show, that was like 5 to 6 episodes was about one volume. This is 12 episodes for one volume, so you have to make a lot of additions. So this is a totally different approach, and some of the major changes from the novel based on me just kind of reading impressions online, because again, I couldn't read it myself. Rika is a quieter character overall in the book, from what I understand, and specifically, she's more reluctant to sort of like display her Chuunibyo-ness. Like she's a little bit more kind of closed off until he like really kind of helps open her up. But the biggest thing is that in the novel, there is no club. So they don't have like hey, we're the like Far East Magical Society and Napping Club, or whatever, the ridiculous club they make. And there's a bunch of characters they add into the anime that were not in the original books, although the author goes and adds them into some of the later volumes of the light novels. So Rika's sister Toka does not exist in the original book. Rika just lives on her own in the apartment. Kumin Senpai, the woman who loves naps more than anything in the world, she's an addition for the show. And then Dekomori, the best middle schooler in the world, is also an addition for the show. So the main characters of the original light novel are just Yuta, Nibutani, and then obviously Rika. And then there are a couple of other minor classmates, like the guy who shaves his head. That guy is also from the light novels. So there's a couple of those other characters. But the characters you really think of and that add that kind of particular KyoAni flavor to the show are inventions of the anime. Other things I thought were notable is that apparently in the books, Yuta has a golden retriever and his name is Peppa-Pig. And I think that that's pretty amazing. There is that golden retriever that Rika's grandparents have that attacks Nibutani that I assume is a reference to Peppa-Pig. But I was a little bit sad to see that Peppa-Pig did not make the cut because I would have liked to have seen some Peppa-Pig in the anime.
That does sound good. He does get the cat named Chimera.
Yes.
And Chimera is a good cat. It's a very patient cat, I will say that. But yeah.
Yes. And then so obviously if the club and most of the supporting characters do not exist in the books, that also means a lot of like the episode plot lines are created for the anime. So like, that overarching plot line is the book's plot line about the love story and the dad, Rika's father, and like all that stuff is in the books. But that sort of the structure of the anime is very much an invention for the anime.
Awesome. That's really interesting to hear because, and you can kind of see that in the show. It kind of makes sense where the additions are very KyoAni additions. Like a KyoAni show at this point, not with a crazy club that makes no sense. I don't know if that's even a KyoAni show. Does it even count? Yeah. And to have that, I think Kumin Senpai and Dekomori in particular are just absolutely classic KyoAni characters. And then some of those episode plot lines feel that way too, and then some of that other stuff you can feel more of that maybe outside authorial touch, and it maybe makes this show as kind of dynamic a blend as it is that they were kind of picking and choosing and adding on.
But it's one of those things that when we're thinking of these like light novel adaptations, I do think you have to kind of put it in a very different context than when you're talking about the Haruhi shows and stuff like that, because the approach to what you're talking about, the style of adaptation is totally different.
Yeah.
But the one other thing I wanted to talk about in terms of my research is I did want to address the Chuunibyo-ness of it all, because obviously this is like a weird Japanese term that doesn't really have an English language equivalent. And I think it's a pretty interesting thing, and it serves obviously as the sort of root of this show, but also it's just such a common trope in a lot of anime and games and stuff nowadays that everything eventually will have a Chuunibyo character if it goes on long enough. That, like, let's talk a little bit about what this is. So Chuunibyo, if you translate it literally, it's like 8th grader syndrome or second year middle school syndrome. And the term has generally existed since at least the 90s, but the kind of modern way we think of it and the kind of the way that this show uses it, that dates back to Japanese internet boards in 2005. So around 2005 on different Japanese internet boards like 2chan, the term started to take on this meaning of referring to this kind of weird, embarrassing narcissism and the weird hobbies and interests that particularly adolescent boys will adopt. And a 2006 Otaku magazine laid out 6 of the most common symptoms of Chuunibyo, and I love these. 1 is starting to listen to Western music. 2 is starting to drink bad coffee and pretending that they prefer it black. 3 is start bragging that they liked a band, quote, before it got big, which I love that that's a thing that transcends all cultural boundaries in particular, because the way it's phrased in Japanese is so funny to me. That's like, oh yeah, that's, yeah, we get that.
All these things are basically just what we called hipsters when you and I were in high school.
Yes, yeah. Number 4 is just believing that they can do anything, and that they're unstoppable or immortal. It's the kind of that thing of that, like, we think of like teenagers just never think about the consequences, that kind of stuff. Number 5 is demanding from their parents to respect their privacy. The number 6 is starting to learn a little bit about history and then constantly going on about how America is bad, which I like that one in particular. I thought was incredibly funny to me. Other cliches that you'll obviously recognize from the show include things like faking injuries to make them seem like cool or weird or important. writing about needlessly elaborate or complex fantasy settings, but never actually writing a story in that setting. They just come up with characters and like this world and all that stuff, but they never do anything with it. Having very weird and obnoxious fashion, and then an obsession with things that are quote unquote cool, like dragons, rock music, the color black, so on and so forth. Weird English or German phrases, obviously, for a Japanese perspective. The most extreme one, which is the one that you see get kind of used by these characters in shows, is that belief that you harbor some kind of special power that's sealed by an eye patch or a bandage around the arm. And this is really, if you want to trace it all back, it just goes back to the character Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho, who is the most like, obviously he's an actual demon in the context of that show. But it's a very Chuunibyo character where he thinks he's so fucking cool, and he's got his dragon of the darkness flame that is sealed in his arm and all this shit, and it's a whole thing. So if you watch Yu Yu Hakusho and you're like, Rika seems like she's just doing Hiei shit all the time, it's like, yes, she is. Chuunibyo, generally speaking, comes from the combination of an emerging narcissism that you get in adolescence, intersected with that encountering of a much bigger world that exists outside yourself that has all these contradictory and complicated ideas. And so you're grappling with this sort of, I'm the most important thing in the world. Also, I'm now learning what the world is. And then you also have this really peculiar environment of school where you're able to create that kind of character. You're able to craft a persona that exists within the school, because that's just kind of how schools work. And as a high school teacher, and specifically someone who teaches freshmen in high school that are, basically around this age, it is definitely, it's very real. Chuunibyo it's a real thing.
Yeah, put a pin in that. I want to ask you that, Sean. I have a question in my notes that I wanted to pose to you specifically that I thought of watching the show. So we'll come back to that.
Yes. So Love, Chuunibyo and Other Delusions is one of the very early anime that explores Chuunibyo as its main theme, because there are multiple shows after this that, it's maybe a bit much to call them copycats or something, but it becomes a thing, a bit of a phase in like 2012 to 2015 or so, where there's maybe about 5 or 6 shows that are pretty similar to this, that are taking, not just having a character that is very Chuunibyo-ish, but the idea of the show, the plot line, is about unpacking this kind of stuff. And this show is definitely the thing that kind of starts off that little kind of mini craze. And nowadays, the Chuunibyo character is in fucking everything. Especially if you play gacha games, you're eventually going to get it. And one thing that is very funny is that a conspicuous number of them are voiced by Uchida Maya, who also plays Dika, who also notably for me is Fischl in Genshin Impact, who's the Chuunibyo character in that game. But she's played like 4 or 5 notable Chuunibyo characters, and it's very funny.
Yes, I would say not so suspiciously, because she's fantastic in this show.
Yes.
And of course you want to do more with her. She's great.
Yes, but it's very funny. So that's the Chuunibyo kind of background here.
Interesting. So, you know what? I'll just ask it now, Sean.
Yes.
As a teacher, what have you seen that compares with anything that is in this show from your students? And I also, the flip side of that is, if you were the teacher in Love, Chuunibyo and Other Delusions, and you had a kid come into class every day with the fucking eye patch on and the bandage and talking about the Dark Lord Shingon, what would your reaction be? I was just thinking that through, especially the first couple episodes. I was like, the teacher in this show has superhuman patience with these girls. And I'm like, what would Sean's reaction be? I need to know.
I think the way they depict Nana-chan Sensei is the best. Because that is it. That's what you do. Yeah. You sort of laugh it off a little bit, and then you get them to do your dirty work for you. You just sort of find a way to make them do the thing that you really need them to do. And I love every time Nana-chan Sensei is in this show, and the ways that she sort of she's able to use Dika so effectively. Yes. So obviously, I've never seen anything that is as big as Dika, right? That is a huge exaggeration of it, but it is that kind of playing up an injury or something that clearly is you're fine. It's no, it's not you're not the sort of wounded animal or whatever. The little tricks that they'll do to try to get attention in that way. You get a lot of choosing all of a sudden to use a different name that on assignments. Not necessarily, this is not a transgender kind of thing, but more just I want to seem cool. I want to oh, I'm not going as don't want to actually give a specific example.
But like trans people don't generally change their name to Dark Lord Shingon, right?
Yes, yeah, but it's stuff like that, or like, and then specifically you have, one of the things you get now because of the anime sort of feedback loop is that you have kids who are into anime that then are like making that a big part of their sort of personality. So I do have a student who has started signing some of his work with a character name from an anime. It's like that has happened. Yeah, and it's like, and then you just get like the weird fashion and stuff like that. That is just a common thing. So yeah,
yes.
Like I think the thing that I like about the show is that it recognizes that, you have these people who are outsiders whose interests and hobbies are very extreme and they take it very far in the context of teenagers. But that also, like, the underlying condition, the underlying, like, sort of narcissism that this is an expression of, like, that's a thing that they all have and that we all have as people. It's just, some people take it in a way that is a little bit more obvious than others. But yes, I don't have anything that is like someone trying to do a dark ritual to summon the answers to their test, which is maybe the funniest thing to me in the show is when she tries to summon the answers to her math test. But definitely you get some weird shit from those kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's funny. And Sean, when you and I were in debate club in high school and started making a like online TV series at debate tournaments that involved time traveling pens and lightsabers and everything, was that Chuunibyo?
Yes. 100%. Yes.
And did you, like me, watching this show, think back on memories like that and find yourself doing what Yuta is doing, whacking his head, at least symbolically whacking his head against the wall, going, forget.
Yes. I mean, everybody's has their embarrassing, like you were a teenager and you did some dumb shit. Yes. There's anyone who watches this show and doesn't have that reaction to some extent, I don't trust. Because that means you're still doing it. If you don't have like a thing that you flash back to and go like, oh, fuck, that's right, I was kind of like that, huh? That means you are in the middle of it still. And you haven't come out the other side.
It was, I think, God, what was the sentence I used in my dissertation? Because I was describing this, and I think I wound up, it's the first time I have used the word cringe in my academic writing. And I think it was, it's thinking about these things causes him comically exaggerated physical pain, an unbearable feeling of cringe. I think I wrote originally the icy feeling of cringe running through his veins, and I probably have to pull that back. But you know what? I actually like that sentence now that I say it. We'll see. But it's true.
It is, yes. It is very, very true. So let's talk a little bit about the crew behind this show. So we've got our director, our stalwart Ishihara Tatsuya here at the wheel again, because that dude is a fucking machine.
Yes.
Because the last thing he made was Nichijou, which was like less than a year before this. So,
and we didn't see him on Hyoka, so we missed him for 1 week on this show, but that's because he was working on this, which makes sense.
Yeah. Series composition is Hanada Juki, who is also the main writer for Nichijou. This is also notable because they pull a Fumihiko Shimo and they write every single episode. Although this is a one-core anime, so that like makes a certain amount of sense. It's not the like, how the fuck did this person possibly write all these episodes?
It's still fairly unusual.
Yes, it is unusual. And also, like, obviously, this is one of those where, that's a lot of work in invention as well, because you're not just adapting material. You're creating a lot of new material for this show specifically. In terms of character design and chief animation director, we've got Ikeda Kazumi back. I think the last time she was in this role, she did Clannad. I don't remember if we've watched anything after that, but she did Conan and Clannad for sure, where she was in that kind of top role, and then she'll be in some other stuff later as well at that point. And I think that might be one of the things that gives it a slightly Clannad feel.
It does,
the art style is very different than Clannad, but I think you can feel that it's got a similar touch to the characters and the way they kind of move and their expressions and stuff. It definitely like gives it a little bit of that Clannad feel. The composer is Nijine, or as they're better known now, they just go by their proper name, Matsuda Akito. But Nijine or Matsuda Akito had created quite a few character songs for different KyoAni shows before this point, like Haruhi and Lucky Star. He did a bunch of character songs for those shows. And then he will also go on to do the music for Sound Euphonium. So we will see more of him there as well. But he's just done a bunch of music across a lot of series. I don't think the music of this show is like the absolute best we've seen, but it is still very good. It's hard coming off of Kohei Tanaka, and kind of competing with that is very difficult. But the music is still quite good in this show.
I think it's the exact right soundtrack for this show, and I think in the second half, it has some tracks that really remind me of the style of the music in the Key shows again. Mm-hmm. Just like I think there's it's a similar kind of quality to that composer who did the games and the shows, because the shows just use the game soundtracks. And I think it's very sweet without being cloying. It's very funny without being kind of milking it too much. It's a very good soundtrack.
Yes. And one thing I'll note, if you're someone like me who's like looking up all these credits and stuff, a lot of websites need to get their shit together and realize that Nijine and Matsuda Akito are the same person, because a lot of them have it listed as two different people. It's the same guy.
That's funny.
And then in terms of episode directors, so again, Ishihara Tatsuya, interestingly enough, does not direct any of the episodes, though he does the first storyboards for the first two episodes. But we do have a lot of our, stalwarts here. So Kawanami Eisaku does 1, 4, and 11, all of which are very good. Kigami Yoshiji, our boy, he's back. He does 2 and 6, although you can tell that he didn't do the storyboards for 2 because you can feel that those are not his shots. And then in episode 6, like the second shot of that is a shot of Yuta on his bed. And as soon as I saw, I'm like, oh shit, this is a Kigami episode, huh? And then I looked up and was like, yep, that's a Kigami. Because just like the exact framing of that with like the frame of the bed and then the window that's behind him and the way it geometrically carves up the frame, like, God, yep, that's the Kigami shot. And episode 6 is... I love episode 6 because it's a totally normal episode. It's just obscenely well directed. But there's nothing about the plot of that episode that's especially important. It's just a Kigami episode, so it looks insanely good. Kitanohara Noriyuki, our boy, is back. He does episodes 3 and 9, 9 in particular being really good. Utsumi Hiroko does episode 5 and the OVA. Sakamoto Kazuya does episode 7. Otorika does episode 8 and the shorts as well. And with Otorika, we've only seen her, I think, in Hyoka, because she did the OVA in Hyoka in one of the other episodes in Hyoka as well. So this is a really good turnout for her, because episode 8 is fucking amazing. Takemoto Yasuhiro does episode 10, and I think I personally would give the crown to him for this one. I think episode 10 is the best episode of the show.
It's either 8 or 10. They're both unreal. Yeah.
It's ridiculously good. And then Ishidate Taichi does the finale. He does episode 12, which is also phenomenal. So, yes, very good turnout for our directors.
You can tell Takamoto comes later because he would have been coming off of Hyoka.
Yes.
But he did. I was impressed that they got him in, because Hyoka is a big 2-core show that's crazy. I was like, maybe he takes a break. No, rolling right on in, doing one of the most complicated episodes of this one and hitting it out of the park.
Yep. And then in terms of our opening and endings and our songs here, this is also pretty notable with this show because we get a debut of an artist who's does a bunch of anime songs these days. So our opening theme is Sparkling Daydream by Zach. That's Z-A-Q. And this was Zach's debut single, and she has gone on to do just an absolute metric shit ton of anime songs, including later KyoAni songs. So this is not the last we'll see of her. She also does songs for all the season 2 in the movies as well. So she's like very much like the artist for the Chuunibyo series, because she also composed the ending theme, Inside Identity, which is sung by the main 4 voice actresses, but is composed by Zach. And then there are 2 insert songs as well, one in episode 8 and one in episode 10, Hajimari no Tane, and then Kimi no Tonari wa. Both of those also composed by Zach and on, because basically she has like this debut album, and all those are songs she made in conjunction with the show, but then also are all songs that are on her debut album, Sparkling Daydream.
I will have to look that up. I was listening to the single earlier today, which has Sparkling Daydream and Inside Identity. And they are tremendous songs. I particularly love how Inside Identity uses the 4 vocalists, and that, like, you can really hear the difference in their voices, and I feel like it's even kind of written to their cadences. It's just really cool. The edit is also pretty different between the full-length and the TV one, where the individual singers sing full verses, whereas in the TV one, they kind of shift line by line, because it's only 90 seconds and it has to go by faster. But I like both versions quite a bit. Sparkling Daydream is a great song. Honestly, it's kind of funny. It feels like it could be the theme song to one of the Key shows, particularly the way it starts is very much like the Air opening. It even has the same kind of opening shot with the sky and the clouds and everything. And then both theme songs, just as pieces of animation, are so great. They're so crazy. I feel like we kind of have 2 modes of Kyoto Animation openings. We have the ones like in Hyoka that sort of tell a story visually and are very creative that way, or we have the ones where they are throwing crazy shit at the wall and it all sticks because it's all funny. And I guess the third kind, which we kind of get in the end song, would also be our choreographed dances, which in this case are kind of clumsy because the characters are, but that, you have the gif here of Rika doing her little tap dance at the end in the end credits for Inside Identity is absolutely adorable. It's a great opening and ending pair.
Yeah, I particularly love how kind of classic feeling Sparkling Daydream is, and the animation. Like, it definitely, like, you don't get anime openings that look like that anymore. And honestly, it's even, I think, for its time, it feels like a little bit of a throwback to the mid-2000s, because it definitely is very similar to the opening to Air, and I like the sort of energy of it's cutting together all these different shots of the characters as they're dancing or going about their daily life, but it's like interconnecting it with other things on the beat. And so it's got a kind of like chaotic energy to it, but it's got just like rides the rhythm of that song so well. And then there's all this great symmetrical imagery to represent the 2 worlds that exist, the sort of imaginary world in the characters' heads, and then the real world of like them going to school and stuff that they actually live in. It's like just conceptually very well done. Yeah,
I wish we got more theme songs like that still. It's, especially for this kind of show, it's just such a great way to represent, I think, the personality of the series, and I think it does it really beautifully.
Yeah, and it avoids your sort of like opening animation cliches. You don't have lots of shots of like outstretched hands in like a dark void and the kinds of things you just get in every single anime opening theme. It stands out a little bit. And then it's got the most classic touch of all that I just love this, is that it ends with that little stinger with Mika doing the pose like next to the logo. That's like the most... Man, anime just doesn't do that shit anymore. It's all trying to be too smooth. Like, I want my sort of branding looking, let's get, like, strike the cool pose with our, like, main character, and just have them stand there for a second. It's good.
Absolutely.
Japanimation Station.
Thanks for listening to Japanimation Station. If you're enjoying the show, please remember to like and subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and tell your friends.
You can support the show directly on Ko-fi at the link in the description, and remember to check out the Weekly Stuff podcast, our long-running series on movies and video games and everything else on all platforms.
And now, back to the show. So that's all of my background stuff. So how do we want to tackle talking about the show, Jonathan?
Oh man, there's so much. Why don't, since you've been talking about your research for a little bit here, why don't I talk a little bit about my research and why this wound up in my dissertation? Because I think this actually opens up to a lot of what this show is about. And again, this just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks because I had no idea the show was going to be about these things. But there is a section in the introduction, which is... Introduction sounds like it's shorter. It's not. It's just a 5th chapter that introduces the thing. But the introduction, I have a section in there that was originally titled Why Anime, Why Now? And it was kind of prompted by a mentor of mine who is on my committee, and she'd kind of been pushing me in this direction. She oversaw my master's thesis as well back at Colorado, of like, what specifically... is it about anime beyond just kind of the formal level or things like that like makes people of, your generation, my generation, and younger so into it and invested around the world, not just in Japan? right? And like, it's one of those things that I had never kind of thought to try to write. And one of the things I say in this section is because it's kind of background radiation to me. You know, I've been watching anime since before I knew it was anime. I didn't know Pokemon was from Japan when I was watching the cartoon as a 7-year-old, right? I learned that later. And so it's just, so I hadn't really tried to like think of this critically. And so this section that I wrote was kind of trying to answer that question of thinking about, because there is a pretty clear generational cutoff. I think I say this at one point, you and I are about the same age, give or take a couple of weeks. And like, I think it is, if you are our age or younger, it's pretty likely you've watched some anime at least and are into it, right? And I think if you are older than us, you might like anime, but it becomes decreasingly like possible the older you get. Not necessarily because of anything intrinsic about people. I think there's a bunch of cultural reasons, there's technological reasons, there's just the basics of like globalism, you know, making it available and all those things. But I did try to answer it in a couple of different ways. And there's also, you know, the issue of, I think there's also this generational divide between people where I think, and millennials and maybe some Gen Xers is where this shifts in the US. But I think older people like our parents' generation would be more of the camp that a lot of the stuff you're into as a kid, you leave behind in adulthood, right? Video games and cartoons are for kids, and then other things are for adults, and that's not so much true for us. So these are all the kinds of things I'm trying to address. I have various theories for this and presentations, because there's a lot of writing about this in Japan for the moment when anime becomes big in Japan in like the 60s, and a lot of people have gone back and looked at it, and I'm kind of trying to cross-apply that to America. But I did kind of feel like some personal interesting dimension was missing from this section I had written, and then you get to episode 8 of Love, Chuunibyo, and Other Delusions. And I think the whole show is, there's no bad episode of this, they're all very good. It's very funny early on, and if it had just continued being funny as a pure comedy, nothing wrong with that. It's great. But I do think the show takes a pretty substantial leap in that episode 7 to 8 transition. And episode 8 particularly, you know, episode 7 ends with Rika kind of squaring off with her sister, and 8 starts with Toka, the sister, berating her for not engaging with reality. And then unexpectedly, this is the jump into the theme song, is Yuta steps in to defend her. And we don't really expect that, because Yuta at this point has mostly been annoyed with Rika, right? But like in this moment, seeing all the kind of cascading tragedies of Rika's life, that her father died suddenly to her, the mother abandoned them, and now her house is gone, which I think we can all relate to being a very traumatic thing if you have a house and a space you grew up in and then it's just gone, and the possibility of going back is ripped away. And in that moment, Yuta, because he is of a piece with Rika, whether he wants to deny it or not, he has been a Chuunibyo, he can see that attraction, and he has this speech that I think is so beautiful where he talks about like, you know, look, yes, you are correct, Toka. You know what? I'll just read it out because I have it here in my notes. I think everything is as you've said, Toka, but I think that Rika knows it too. It's because she knows it that Rika acts this way. It's the truth, so you have to accept it, even if someone tells you that, even if there are lots of things you have to accept. When things happen one after the other, with no time for you to prepare yourself, then suddenly it's all over. It's not running away, it's not trying to turn away, but to think matter-of-fact words are enough to settle things matter-of-factly, to think that's good enough, is that really enough? And I think that's a beautiful piece of writing. I think it gets to the core of a lot of what this show is about. And I immediately just wrote all that down and thought of putting that in this section of my intro, because part of my intro is about some of, I think, the pressures on the world, kind of the apocalyptic nature of life in the 21st century that I do think leads people to anime narratives that often are much more attuned to those emotions than Western narratives for various reasons we can talk to. And I included that. And then as the show goes along, those final 4 episodes, 9, 10, 11, 12, are about kind of finding that balance with Rika and Yuta of, you know, packing your childhood away in boxes and putting them out on the balcony versus wearing your childhood obsessions on your sleeves, as Rika quite literally is doing. And what is the balance between those? And that there is something good about Rika coming out and engaging with the world, but there is also an essential part of herself that is suppressed. And that in the end, the final movement of the show is Yuta taking her to the beach and playing into her fantasy specifically as a lens of confronting reality, and that fantastical fictional lens is vital to her being able to accept the real world. I think it expresses all those ideas so beautifully that I did wind up rewriting this section to kind of build that story as kind of our main structuring metaphor, because I think it expresses a lot of those ideas I was trying to explore here in a really beautiful way. And I think it's kind of an essential anime text for thinking about just the role of anime fiction in the world. I think it expresses all that really, really beautifully and profoundly, in addition to being a tremendously funny and beautiful show. And that is why it now has a place of honor in my dissertation.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting because it makes me think of a very different show, but I think it's kind of tackling with broadly similar ideas, which is Gundam Build Fighters, which is also,
Yes.
does the thing of where it's about sort of like the value of hobbies and like what this does to your life and like why and how you need it. And obviously like that show tonally and stylistically is very different, but I do think they're both texts that are grappling with this sort of modern era of media, of where it's so sort of like central to so many people's lives, whether you're the like kind of the classic nerd or geek stereotypes, or you're just your random person who's watched The Office 15 times all the way through, right? Like it's just media consumption is just at the center of everybody's lives because it's so available. And our lives are so kind of depressing most of the time.
Yes.
Like where American work culture, and then obviously Japan has its own work culture issues, are so intense and so overbearing and consume so much of your life. You have so much or so little control over your life in the direction of your life. You have so little financial power to determine your life. And so like this cheap access to media that both gives you comfort, but also gives you a sort of like mental and kind of psychological space in which to deal with and grapple with and confront these ideas in a way in which your quote unquote real life doesn't give you anywhere to do that. Like both these shows and many other shows like this are grappling with those ideas and kind of coming to terms with, like, is it okay? Is it bad? Right? The sort of conventional wisdom is that you should pack this stuff away. You should ignore it. You should move on. You should go live a quote unquote adult life. And then as people go on into adult lives, they realize, oh, this shit sucks. It sucks, and in ways that are different than it was for older generations because of the way in which the economy and society has changed. It is not the same thing. So yeah, I think that like it is a show that I think makes you think about those problems. And Anika as a character is so interesting because she's not what you think at first, right? And she's certainly not what Yuta thinks at first. Like her Chuunibyo-ness comes from something that's much deeper and more emotional than it ever was for Yuta. Yuta sort of like slipped into it, whereas like she needed to embrace it in order to survive. And I think there's something very sort of powerful about it, exploring that idea and how this has helped her sort of confront her grief and how everybody else is telling her that is the wrong way to do it, and have only been making it worse for her. So yeah, I like your kind of analysis there, and it makes a lot of sense when you laid out why that would slot neatly into an intro for your dissertation.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful to the show because there was some piece missing from this thing I had written, and now it feels very complete to me. And a lot of the strategy I as a writer use in this dissertation as individual sections are sort of undergirded by some kind of representative example that carries through. So, for instance, there's a chapter on sort of video games' relationship to anime where the undergirding example is Sword Art Online. And there's lots of other examples we go to, but it's the one we keep kind of checking back on. And I always find that a very useful way to kind of keep the reader on board with something kind of to hold on to that they can understand. And this is the one that kind of gave me that for this section, and very usefully. And I found myself, because as you say, this is not like unplowed territory for anime. There's a lot of anime that deal with themes like this, and I've seen other ones that I was thinking of. I think there's certain Makoto Shinkai things that I think this reminds me of, and I think it does some of those ideas better. This, I think, in some ways, not always, but in some ways, is the show that Wonder Egg Priority was trying to be before it completely fell apart a couple of years ago. It doesn't have the same kind of focus on homosocial bonds that show does, or like explicit mental health discussions, but I think it does have the fantasy versus reality versus kind of hyper reality of confronting trauma that show was kind of trying to get into. And I do just, there is a level of, I think, articulation in the artistry to this that is very representative of KyoAni, but I also think I haven't quite seen in other shows dealing with this exact version of the idea. The closest would be Gundam Build Fighters, which is slightly different because it's about hobbyism specifically, and not quite, the characters of Gundam Build Fighters are not traumatized in the way that Rika is, right? But Gundam Build Fighters, I had not thought of that comparison, but it actually is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing with this show is that it's early, right? Because it's 2012.
Yeah.
Like, so it's earlier than a lot of these other examples as well. Because I do think it sort of it enters this conversation, I think, pretty ahead of the wave. And I think it's one of the reasons why after this show, you get a lot of kind of copycats, broadly speaking, that are dealing with similar sorts of ideas and dealing with similar sorts of characters, because I do think that this show really just kind of hits a nerve. And there's a reason why it's not necessarily a KyoAni level hit, but it's one of the best-selling shows of 2012, because I think it gets its moe stuff, because this is definitely a very moe show, and the girls are very cute and they do cute things, but it also, I think, the fundamental story really hits home, like what it's trying to do.
Yes. And I do think, as we said earlier, just that tonal balance and the sense of pacing is so good, where I think it's pretty clearly divided down the middle, 6 and 6, where you have your kind of opening 6 where it is a pretty pure comedy. I think episode 6, with the story of the friend, Yuta's friend Makoto, he's kept the notebook with the girl rankings, and it starts getting slightly more serious there because it's funny, but it also is a bad thing he has done, and it starts making them think about actually kind of heteronormative interactions with the opposite sex. And then 7 and 8, that two-parter on through the end, is this, I think, very natural shift into the romance side of it. And I was truly amazed by the time you get to episode 10 what a fucking sweep you off your feet romance this show is. It's genuinely extraordinarily moving in the way that I think parts of Clannad are, where it's just you live for this romance by the end of the show, which I think watching episode 1, I would not have believed. I didn't even quite think that this was going to be about a romance between Rika and Yuta in episode 1, because, and I my anime brain knows that's probably where it goes, but it does a really effective job, I think, selling you on the idea that he's very annoyed by her, and that's something he's trying to leave behind, and she doesn't seem like a natural romantic object. And then the way these things evolve and the way he sees her as a person, it's just done very beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that structure of it's so tight. It's so perfect of a season of TV. That trick in the middle point of shifting to the drama in the romance. It just, you don't even realize it's happened until it's happened. And I agree that I like the phrasing, if you get swept up into it, because you're just watching the show that felt like an episodic comedy, and now all of a sudden you get sort of completely pulled into the drama of the relationship between these two people.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't, it's not quite like this, but it sort of feels like if Nichijou made a turn at some point and you were suddenly invested in a really serious piece of dramatic romance in it. Because it's never as silly as Nichijou, but it's more towards that direction than it is towards Clannad at the beginning of this thing.
Or it's even more Lucky Star-ish, because the show is also steeped in references, because they're constantly making references, both sort of broad and very specific. There's a lot of, I'm glad that we did our Fate Stay Night stuff before we watched this show, because,
I was about to say,
there is a lot of Fate Stay Night, including they straight up dropped the noble phantasm word hogu in Japanese in one of the shorts, and she just says oh, were you hit by a noble phantasm, is what the subtitle should have said, because it is wearing its influences on its sleeve. There's constant Neon Genesis Evangelion references, all kinds of stuff.
It is very funny that this aired literally right after Fate Zero. Fate Zero ends in June of 2012. This starts in October. it could not have been that direct a response to Fate Zero, but it sure feels like it. Like, there are pieces of animation in this that totally feel like we can do the UFO table thing too. It's just that we don't do UFO table stories. We do it inside of our weird little slice of lifey things.
Yes.
Because we talked about this with Nichijou. You know, Kyoto Animation is never going to make a shonen battle anime. They're never going to make a Fate Stay Night style, you know, epic fantasy anime. What they will do is they will make stories about relatively normal people in relatively normal settings, where they can insert crazy animation as though it were from a shonen battle anime or a crazy fantasy anime, and they will blow everyone else out of the water at it to a certain degree. Not quite UFO Table, but a lot of other people. I mean, there's the scene in episode 5 where they are having the big fight in the pool that just is like, it's one of the best, like, Dragon Ball Z beam struggles I've ever seen, where they have the water and the girls are, like, being pulled along by the hose. And it's just, I love it that Kyoto Animation constantly kind of teases us, like, if we wanted to, we could make a shonen anime that would, like, fucking kill you. It's so cool. But we're not going to do that. We're going to tell our kinds of stories, but we're going to bring these moments in every so often. It has that kind of Nichijou effect to it.
Yeah, because there was a period there where, with like shows like Haruhi and Clannad, where it was more like, oh, if we wanted to do the sports anime, we can do a sports anime better than anybody. We're just not going to do a straight sports anime. And yes, then at some point it kind of shifted between this and Nichijou for, yeah, if we wanted to do our big, crazy, weird battles that destroy like whole buildings and shit like that, like, yeah, we could do it. We could do it. But we also want to have cute girls summoning the answers to their math homework. So we want to do both these things at the same time.
Indeed, it's very fun. And this show is not quite on the level of like Hyoka, of where I might call it the, most impressively animated show ever made. It is still, though, 100% a Kyoto Animation show, and it looks stunningly gorgeous. When it gets into those big action moments, it is just unreal. Like that pool scene I mentioned, any of the big fights, particularly in episode 2, where you get kind of your first big battle between Toka and Rika, and it's just pure Fate Stay Night at a certain point, like some of those things, like when she's summoning the weapons. But then, of course, you also have all the character animation, and I think for me, that's part of why episodes 8 and 10 are my two favorites, is just, I think, the attention to character detail, and the storyboarding, and the pacing of those episodes, and the way they conjure an atmosphere, like episode 8, with the two taking the train back home, and then spending that weekend alone. I think it's so palpable. You can cut the atmosphere of that episode with a knife, of like the feeling of being alone with someone you have feelings for in that way, but it is also kind of emotionally fraught. And then episode 10, all the stuff where they are under the bridge having their first kind of real romantic encounter. Same kind of thing, where that is also the Kyoto Animation magic, just full bore.
Yeah, there's such a weight and expressiveness to the characters. Like, not anywhere near as detailed as Hyoka, because this has a much more kind of, it's not chibi necessarily, but it's a much more kind of soft, kind of comedic character design to it. It's got a really interesting art style where you've got stuff like on Nika, they use kind of reds on the detail, like inner detail of her character to kind of give detail to her hair and stuff like that. That gives it a very kind of particular look. The backgrounds sometimes are very sketchy in a way that I really love. That, again, it gives the show a very kind of lighter look overall that makes it feel not as sort of ambitious. It's not as intense as Hyoka, which is like so visually rich and so dense with detail. But you still get that fundamental animation and the great composition of shots to support all of that. And there's a physical, there's like a tangible quality to the animation at times that I think is really, really powerfully effective. You get it in like one of their recurring motifs I love, of the Nika coming down and Yuta having to help her come down, and she puts her feet in his hands. And there's something about the way they animate it and the way the body shifts, like the weight on the body shifts, and he kind of catches her and holds her and stuff, that it's like you can feel it. There's such like a texture to that. And also when you get some of the more romantic stuff where they embrace or hug, you just get such a sense of real physical intimacy between the two characters, of like her hands digging into the back of his jacket and ruffling it and stuff like that. I think that's the places where you're reminded, oh, this is KyoAni doing the show. Like when they need to go to that higher level of sort of animation detail and expressiveness of character, they can pull that out. It's just not there, I think, 100% of the time in the way it is in something like Hyouka, where Hyouka is like doing that in fucking every shot somehow. But this show is not really demanding of that. This show needs a much more lighter comedic touch for the daily life scenes, and then can shift into that much more sort of intense dramatic moment or style when it needs to for those moments.
And that is what makes this like so prototypically a KyoAni show, even though this is one where, I said last week with like Hyouka and Nichijou, I can't imagine anyone else making those shows. I can imagine someone else making Love, Chuunibyo, and Other Delusions, in part because some people kind of have, in kind of the way you say that it's kind of been ripped off is maybe the wrong word, but borrowed from. But I can't imagine anyone doing it with this level of effectiveness, because it's the ability to both go to the extremes of the fantasies that the characters are having, both in terms of the silliness, but also the beauty, like the finale, episode 12, when, Yuta shows her the invisible boundary lines and creates that kind of beautiful world where there's the sea and the stars and everything. It can sell those moments so beautifully, but it can also do the, hyper intimate, hyper detailed, minutia of character animation in those moments where they embrace, or where you really have to sell the romance through physicality. And I think it is those extremes that this studio is uniquely good at.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you want to talk about some of the characters before we dive into the episodes, and we also get to sing the praises of the voice actors? Because this is a hell of a cast.
Yes, sure. So let's start with our leads here. So let's start with our boy Yuta, Togashi Yuta, who's voiced by Fukuyama Jun, who we've talked about here and there, but we haven't done a whole big anime where he was the main character. But we did cover one of his first ever shows, which is Turn A Gundam, where he plays Keith, who's one of the other characters from the moon, who's the guy who eventually starts baking bread and all that stuff. That was one of Fukuyama Jun's first ever performances. He's extremely good. One of his other performances that everyone will remember is he's soldier number 66 in Nichijou. He's one of the random cast of extremely beloved, experienced voice actors in those weird the kind of fantasy segments in Nichijou with the airship and all that kind of stuff. And then we have seen him because he plays the asshole student council guy, not once but twice, because he plays that character in the Clannad OVA, and he plays basically the same character in Hyouka. Not as much of an asshole, more of like a hidden asshole, but I did find that very, very funny. But he is, of course, in lots and lots of stuff. He's the main character in Persona 5. He is Chibi Godzilla in a series of shorts called Chibi Godzilla no Gyakushu, or Chibi Godzilla's counterattack, I guess you could call it. But his most famous role has got to be Lelouch in Code Geass. Is the main character in that series. But my favorite performance, will always be my favorite performance for Fukuyama Jun, is he's Panda in Polar Bear Cafe, which is maybe one of the all-time great comedic performances in the history of anime.
It absolutely is. That was not my literal introduction to him, but probably because I had seen things like Turn A Gundam. But it was probably the first time I sat up and noticed Fukuyama Jun, and he is. That ensemble in Polar Bear Cafe is tremendous. But it's such a committed, relaxed, but also razor sharp comedic performance. And I can hear, even though Yuta does not sound much like Panda, I can hear those qualities here too, because the range you have to do with Yuta, there's a real precision to it of doing the exaggerated Chuunibyo persona as the Dark Flame Master, doing the person trying to be a straight-laced high schooler, doing the person who is annoyed at Rika, and then eventually doing the kind of swooning romantic hero. And it just shows his range as an actor, and he is truly incredible. He is someone at this point that if his name shows up, I'm very excited. I just love hearing his voice. Panda is my favorite too, but this is a great leading man performance, and I think very, very situated to his skill set.
Yeah, and I do love that the Dark Flame Master persona is basically just the main character from Persona 5. I do find that very delightful, specifically when he's in his Phantom Thief getup. It's the same character, and it's very funny. But yeah, I think Fukuyama Jun just has that full range and is really able to, when he needs to dig in and do the dramatic weird Dark Flame Master stuff, he's obviously incredibly good at that because he's played lots and lots of characters that are in that style because he's got such a cool voice. But it's the more kind of everyday version of Yuta, the kind of scummy role in the comedy of him kind of poking fun at Rika, that is, I think, the kind of heart of this character. He's so good at it. And it's those last couple of episodes where he's sort of coming to terms with the fact that he's fallen for this girl. It's so good. That moment where he's kind of like cradling himself, like thinking back to him hugging her when he helps her down from the roof. And whispers her name to himself. Yeah. Like there's just an intimacy to the performance in some of those moments that's really remarkable.
I also love just the journey you get in the final moments of the series, because I watched this scene several times to write about it in the dissertation, but when he does his big final performance as Dark Flame Master at the end of episode 12 to help Rika, and it's such a good bit of performance, because every other time we've heard Dark Flame Master, it is for comedy, effectively, right? Even if the character is being serious when he does it, or he's being forced to do it or whatever. But this is him, like, earnestly doing it as like a romantic hero, and I think the way it feels like it is a more mature version of Yuta re-embracing this persona is a really impressive piece of voice acting, because if you played the two, the him doing it there versus in some of the flashbacks back to back, it's not necessarily like the quality of the voice changes, it's just the way he does it. It's a different Yuta doing this now, and I think that's very impressive.
Absolutely. Then we have our other lead here playing Takanashi Rika is Uchida Maya, which this is one of her big breakout roles. She's been in a couple of things before this, like the show Sankareya, where she plays a zombie girl, which that's a pretty good show. But this is became, I think, kind of her really defining role early on, because as I said, she goes on to voice a lot of Chuunibyo characters, including Fischl in Genshin Impact. But she's been in a lot of stuff that I've really liked. Not a lot of stuff that we've covered. Something that we've talked about, even if it hasn't been like a show we dived into, is Bocchi the Rock. She plays Nijika's older sister, the woman who runs the club that the girls play out. But she's in a lot of other stuff I've really enjoyed. She's Norman in Promised Neverland, which that's a great performance, because that's one of the few times she's played like a little boy, and it's really good. She's Katarina in a show that I had to look up this title because I could not for the life of me remember what the fuck the show is called. It's I reincarnated into an otome game as a villainess with only destruction flags, or a Hamefuda is what it's generally just called in Japanese. But that is a very good performance as well. And then we will also see her again, because she's one of the main characters in Myriad Colors Phantom World. But the other thing with Uchida Maya that is just very funny, if you like Seiyu stuff and you like listening to some of the radio shows and stuff like this, you will know this about her, is that she is the older sister of another very famous voice actor, Uchida Yuma, who is like Megumi Fujiguro in Jujutsu Kaisen, or he's Yuma in Build Fighters Try. Gundam Build Fighters Try. And so she, for like an entire generation of young male voice actors, basically Hanae Natsuki's generation, that kind of same age range, they just all treat her like she's their older sister, because she's the older sister for Yuma, and it's very good.
Absolutely. Also played Angel Devil at the end of Chainsaw Man Season 1, which was, I just remember that character and that being one of the more striking performances in that show to me. But we could go on her list of credits is extraordinarily long. It's actually very funny to bring up her Wikipedia page, because it's just endless. Yeah.
I was shocked that we had not done a show, because I could have sworn that we had done something that she was like a main character in, but as far as I could tell, that is not the case. So, but this is one of her like defining performances, and she is so good, because she has to do a lot here, right? Because I feel like a lot of the comedy of the show rests on her shoulders, because she has to give these very adorable reactions. Like I have the gif in my notes of Yuta hitting her on the head with the height measuring thing, and the little like squeaks she gives when she gets hit by stuff, and like the physical comedy reactions of the character are so good, because it's both funny and adorable, and it has to kind of be both those things at the same time. And it's really like Rika's character in general, that she has to carry a lot of different kinds of comedic and dramatic elements, but also she has to be like the most adorable character in the world. And it's obviously a lot of that also is like the animation and the physical performance of the character. Like there's some stuff near the end, I think it's in episode 10, where they're getting ready to do their little like performance or whatever before Yuta meets Rika's mom, and she does the little like pinky finger kiss thing with him, and then she gets embarrassed and sort of like skips out of the room in this very cute way. Like there's just a lot of the physicality of the character is so adorable. But she then also needs to have all of her weird Chuunibyo stuff. So she has to have the adorable high schooler side that then gets modified into her Jiao Shingan, like, carrier of the wicked eye, and all of her weird, like, German shit, and yelling out, like, Schwarz Mark II with her umbrella. And, you know, I just think that there's such a delicate nature to that performance where all that stuff needs to be funny, but it also needs to be earnest and come from the character. Like, it's not like she doesn't think it's ridiculous. She doesn't think it's silly. She thinks it's fun and cool. And I think, like, you have to be able to express all of that while also, you know, trusting and knowing that the rest of the show is going to have, like, this sort of, like, more comedic bent to how the scenes are playing out. But for her, like, when she does the thing in episode 1, which I love, where she's on her little roller skate shoes and she does the spin, and then she, like, crouches down and goes, like, it looks like they got 2 to 3 of my ribs. And she has to do those kinds of lines and just strike a really delicate balance with them. I think you should admire just, like, every single time she's, like, the funniest part of every single scene she's in.
She absolutely is. I mean, I can't think of many other leading performances where you come out of the show thinking, I can imagine this person as a lead in a Fate Stay Night style anime. I can imagine them as a lead in a Nichijou style wacky comedy. I can imagine them as the lead in a very, like, normal show like Hyoka. I could imagine her, like, she could have played the main woman in Hyoka also. Like, she just, from this one performance, you can imagine her in, like, so many very disparate kinds of anime, and that is because it is a poor performance that rides those lines so beautifully. And yeah, it is. I like, principally, my main reaction is she is so funny, and almost everything she does in the first half makes me laugh. But again, just like Fukuyama Jun, when you have to slide into the more, like, she is a romantic heroine, she does it beautifully. And there's a sadness in those kind of final episodes that she does that is incredible. And yeah, it's a really special performance, and you understand why this kind of blew her into stardom. It's amazing.
Yeah. And there is a very funny clip online from a few years ago from one of her radio shows that she hosts where a listener wrote in and, like, asked her, you know, like, what is the difference, or, like, how do you, like, draw the difference between all the different Chuunibyo characters you play? And she does some lines for, like, Fischl and Dika, and the character she plays, I think, is Data Alive, and all these other characters. And it's like, it's so funny because there is, like, they're similar, but there's such a good bit of, like, nuance between them that, like, even though the quality of the voice for all those characters is very similar, because obviously, you know, like, Hoyoverse cast her as Fischl because they saw this show. Like, I can guarantee that. So it's what they're looking for, but she as a performer obviously sees the differences in those characters, that there's, like, a really nuanced difference between them. And it's one of those clips that if you can find it online, I'm pretty sure it was in English, so it's probably not that hard to find on YouTube. It's very impressive. It's one of those things you're like, yeah, there's a lot of artistry to voice acting because you're playing a very similar character that's in a very similar vocal range. But if I closed my eyes, I could tell which character was which character. So she's just a very skilled actress.
Yeah, tremendous stuff. And speaking of funny, then we got to talk about Dekomori, who just every line she has in the show is an amazing laugh line and hits it out of the park.
Yeah, so this is Uesaka Sumire, who she is also in a bunch of stuff these days, but this was her big breakout role. This is, like, the first main character she played in anything. And it's fun for me because I'm currently playing through Yakuza 8, or Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and she plays Saiko, or Sachan, who's also a character from 7. And so I've been getting a lot of Uesaka Sumire, although I can never tell because she is such a vocal chameleon that there's no two characters she plays that sounds anything similar to me. It's the character, I just can never tell it's her. Also, she plays Lum in the remake of Urusei Yatsura, and I haven't watched all that show, but I've seen some of it, and it's like, I can't believe it's the same actress. Like, she's just totally different. Their voice is totally different every character I've seen her in.
Yeah, and I have not seen the remake of Urusei Yatsura either, but when I saw that here on your notes, I was like, oh, that makes sense, though. I can see her doing that, like, from the Dekomori performance. Like, she would be really good for that. I actually haven't heard. Is that show good? Is that a good remake of Urusei Yatsura?
I've only seen, like, 2 episodes of it.
Okay.
And, like, it was fine. Like, I didn't see enough of it to give much more of a comment. I was just kind of curious. But
that's just, I would like to hear, I should go watch a little bit of that, because I would like to hear her do that. That sounds fun.
Yes, and then she also is in Myriad Colors Phantom World. So when we get to that show, it's like a mini Chuunibyo reunion or something, although they were still playing these characters at that point. But yeah, Uesaka Sumire, just phenomenal. And Dekomori, what a fucking character. Oh my god. I mean, what an absolute triumph of character design that character is.
Yep.
Like, it's just the ridiculous giant twin tails with her beanbags on the bottom that then she occasionally swaps out for, like, other objects. Like, when she wants to throw the smackdown and she's got, like, giant sandbags on the end and then they get, like, caught in the gutter or whatever. I think it's, like, episode 10 or 11 that happens. It's such a funny character. She's got that very absurd vocal tick where she says des, but like very intensely, so it sounds like the English death. And she just does that all the time. It's so funny. You have all the shit in the last episode where she's pretending to be normal, like what Mika has been doing, but she just can't pull it off. So it keeps on like slowly breaking bit by bit until she just ends up, even though she has her hair down like normal, just sounding like this weird little gremlin girl, which is what Dekamori is. I love the character so much. I remember when I originally watched this show and then I learned that this character wasn't in the light novels, my mind was blown because she was my favorite character. It's like, how could you do this story and you don't have this weird crazy girl that just smacks people with these little balls on the end of her fucking giant twin tails? It's the best character.
It is, although I can also kind of see the logic of she feels like such a kind of visual first character to me of like, I don't know how you would have the idea or explain her in text. I mean, I know light novels have illustrations, but, you know, the illustrations come later. You write the book first. And she is like a character so built, I feel like, from the outside in, almost of that, like, I got a crazy idea for a character design. Let's see if this will work. And then it kind of all flows from there, because that character design is just epically phenomenal. It creates, and you can tell like every animator who comes through the show just has a ton of fun figuring out what crazy action beats they can do with her twin tails. The episode where, you know, you have her, where she doesn't have them in anymore, it is like horrifying for a moment to see Dekamori looking like a normal person. And then, all those vocal ticks, it's so great. The when she's talking normally and she starts pronouncing the oo on desu instead, like softly, because she was saying des, like death, and now she's saying desu. And like it's freaking everyone out. I just love it.
Yeah, it's so good. I love all of her fucking outfits too. Like there's her like outfit when she's out, like her personal clothes or whatever, and she's got this dumb little crown on her head. And then the legitimately the best part of the OVA is her dress as a fucking Christmas tree. It's just the funniest thing in the world. Like she's just got the most outrageous sense of fashion. And then the other little detail of the character, which is that for her classmates, she's like, you know, she's this little kind of genius rich girl. And so you have that one scene where she's sort of talking to, I think, Kumin and Yuta, and then she's leaning back into the classroom because someone has a question on her homework, and she's like doing that back and forth, and you realize that like, oh, for the other 8th graders, like she's probably like eccentric, but she's also really nice and helps them out. So it's like, you know, she is, you know, you definitely get the sense that she is in this kind of Chuunibyo place, not out of a kind of emotional trauma, the way that Rika is, that she's a little bit more like Yuta, where she can interact with people on a more kind of like even keel. It's just she doesn't always want to do that. She also wants to have fun and role play Fate Stay Night and be the servant to Rika's master and all that kind of stuff. And their dumb fucking summoning circle they build that she keeps on turning on that makes the blue light go on. And it's just, God, she is such an outrageously funny character.
I love her. I love her to death. She rocks.
Yes. Then we have Akasaki Chinatsu, who plays Nibutani, or Mori Summer, as Dekamori would call her, or Nisei Mori Summer, where she is, I think the only thing we've seen that she is also in, or that we've covered on something before, is in Jujutsu Kaisen. She's Miwa, who's the blue-haired girl that's like a Gojo's fangirl. Which is also, that's a very fun character. But she's in a bunch of stuff. She's Felt in ReZero, which that's a very good performance. She's Mikoto in Danmachi, or, God, is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon? I think is the name of that show. That show is a lot better than that title makes it sound like. That it's the worst fucking English title in the world. And then apparently she's Nurse Joy in Pokemon X and Y, but just the Pokemon X and Y anime.
So because you wrote this down, I had to look this up. I didn't know this about Japanese Pokemon. They recast Nurse Joy for every region. So And it's all big actors. It's been Yuriko Yamaguchi. It's been Kikuko Inoue. It's been Shoko Nakagawa. It's like a crazy list of actors who have come through and done Nurse Joy, but they change them every few seasons. I did not know that about Pokemon.
Yep, I did not know that either until I looked it up, and I saw that Nurse Joy credit. I was like, oh, that's weird. But it was like, but the weird part was not just, oh, I guess, they've recast Nurse Joy. It's like, oh, but it's not like she's still Nurse Joy. She's just Nurse Joy for like 2 to 3 years.
Right, because when you said it, because I saw it here, Sean, and I went, she's not old enough to be Nurse Joy. Like, that's a role cast in 1999. But no, it's because they change it, yeah.
But Nibutani, another great character in a great performance. I love the way that this character, like, very subtly evolves over the course of the show, where, she comes in as this nice kind of, like, counterpoint with Yuta, where you think that, oh, she's just a normal high school girl and she's like the pretty popular girl or whatever, but then really she's harboring this dark secret. And I love her version of Chuunibyo. You only ever see little shades of it, but that's probably like the most real Chuunibyo, or at least like relative to my experience of the like girl who's into like astrology and spiritualism and all that, like just a little bit too much, where she starts to really kind of believe that she starts having like she has some kind of like power, which I have seen that both when I was in high school and as a teacher, there it's like, oh, you're kind of going a little bit too far with like the Wiccanism and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
Like it's a bit much, and I love those little clips you see of her, and then when she slips into it and she just says like if you don't stop, I'm going to curse you to death. And it's like, oh shit, she really is into all that whole world. But so she has that. She has her whole kind of like aggressive side to the character. But I love in particular her relationship with Dekomori as that kind of evolves. They have this sort of like very frictious relationship, but also you realize that she's really looking out for this kid, and she's kind of like becomes an older sister sort of figure.
In the OVA,
great.
you have, or no, it's not the OVA. It's in one of the Chuni shorts. It's Kumin's short. She just offhandedly refers to Nibutani and Dekomori as best friends, and I love that. Like from Kumin's perspective, these are just two best friends who express it by fighting, and it's like so true when you look at it from the outside in. I also love that in the OVA, the ending is that it's not Yuta and Rika kiss. It's that Nibutani and Dekomori accidentally kiss, which also made me realize, oh, they're absolutely fucking in love. They're absolutely.
Yes.
Season 2 should be about the two of them coming out and being in love, and I will be disappointed if that is not a plot thread.
Yeah, I mean, they get the first kiss, and then also, they have a very emotional, physical embrace where,
Yes.
Dekomori is so distraught over everything that's happening. And then Nibutani, like, hugs her, which that's something we didn't talk about with Usaka Sumide's performance Dekomori, is how heartbreaking those last couple of episodes are, where
Yes.
she just can't, like, deal with what's going on. But yeah, Nibutani, also a very, very fun character. And then you get Kumin Senpai, played by Asakura Azumi. She hasn't been in as much stuff that I've seen, but she is a character named Misaki Shokuho in the Railgun series, which I really love that character. That's what that kind of rich girl archetype, like, that sort of thing, but it's a very funny character. Yeah. And then she also is one of the main characters in the Idolmaster series, meaning if you look up her credits, she's in like 500 things called Idolmaster, and it's hard to parse what is what. But I love Kumin Senpai so much.
I love her.
In particular, you just mentioned the short from her perspective,
Yes.
which is one of the funniest things in this whole series, is just seeing from her perspective, where she just like really believes she's in the nap club, and she's like kind of a little bit annoyed that nobody else is taking naps with her, but because she's so laid back, like she's just a little bit annoyed about it. And yeah, it's just such a fun character that, like with all the other characters, shows this very subtle growth, or maybe it's not even like really growth, it's more that like her attachment to these other weird kids, because she's older than all of them, leads her to like wanting to really help them out. And you have that great moment in the last episode where she's inherited the Jao Shingon from Rika, and she does all the Rika-isms and all that stuff, which is outrageously funny. It's just a great character.
I love her. She's my favorite. When I was in high school, I feel like Nibutani is the girl I would have been attracted to. And today, Kumin is the kind of person I want as a girlfriend.
Yes.
Just her favorite activity in the world is napping, and she loves pillows. I mean, you'd know what to get her for every anniversary and birthday, just a new pillow. She has a whole fucking collection. And very laid back, very easy to please. I agree. The Chuni short about her is one of the funniest things KyoAni has ever made. The whole that she has this whole like philosophy around napping of like, you want a slight breeze, but not too much, or else you'll catch a cold. You want to be at this angle from the sun. Like, she is a fucking pro at napping. And it's just such a weird, funny thread in this show that they are trying to make their club. They set up their booth next to Kumin, who is trying to set up her napping club. Neither are getting any entrance, so they just combine the clubs, and they are the Magical Far East Napping Society. East there, or spring, summer thereof is what they translate it as. It's just fucking great.
Yes, Kumin Senpai, just an absolute legend. And as someone who, in my adult life has really come to appreciate a nap, mostly because my fucking job makes me get up at like 5 in the goddamn morning. So it's like you have to nap to survive. It's just like I feel like, she's a senpai to me as well. Like I look up to her. Like it's what I aspire to be. Is what Kumin Senpai can do.
It's truly amazing. I do love the moment at the festival where Ishiki tries to confess to her, and she is sleeping in a fucking like not a beanbag, a sleeping bag out just in the middle of the crowd, and everyone just knows to kind of make space for the weird napping girl, and she is so confident in who she is. And everyone, like, no one makes fun of her for it. She's just the girl who naps.
Yeah, it's amazing because yes, there's a shot because I think is that episode 10. Yeah,
it is episode
10. Yeah. There's this big wide shot from like the top down that shows all the kids because they're at that dance and they're all looking up at the stage, and she's just there in the middle of the frame down by where the fucking bonfire is, just in a futon. Like, it's the most ridiculous thing, and it goes totally uncommented on for like 3 minutes until eventually Ishiki's on the stage and does his confession thing, and you finally get a reverse shot where you see her there, and yeah, she's just taking a nap right by the fucking bonfire with a whole futon and a huge comforter and like a sheet that's underneath the futon. She's got a whole setup. It's amazing. She's just Kumin Senpai for life. She's the best. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Then we've got some of our side characters. So then we've got Toka, Rika's older sister, who is voiced by Sendai Eri. Who I've not seen a lot of stuff with her. She's in a bunch of Pretty Cure stuff because she's in the original Pretty Cure show, and then she's also in one of the later ones. So she's got like 50 Pretty Cure credits. The thing that I thought was amazing is when I was looking her up, I noticed this little detail that apparently on some radio show, Sugita Tomokazu gave her the nickname Edizen Dizer, like she's like a super robot, and I fucking love it because it's just Ellie Sendai, but with a ZER basically at the end.
Is this what Sugita does in his free time? He just gives famous seiyuu cool nicknames?
Apparently, because yes, like it's a thing on her Japanese Wikipedia page. Like there's a whole little like paragraph about it, and it's very funny.
If you've forgotten, that's also where Gotoza comes from. In the whole heart. Yeah.
That's great. It's very good. But I love Toka. I love her weird thing with the ladle that she uses as her weapon and just smacks the shit out of people. Her blackmailing Yuta by having. She really thinks ahead because the whole thing is like, because it was like a year or two ago that she recorded that, because she's obviously been living in that apartment for several years and she's just been holding on to this thing for a rainy day. It makes you wonder, like, what other blackmail material does she have for other people just lying around just in case? But yeah, she's just such a fun, weird character. She's got her whole bit with Yumeha, the little girl, where they're like, where Yuta just keeps like coming into his room and they're playing house, but it's like they're setting up a divorce, and Yumeha has this little like divorce thing written in crayon that just says like Yumeha and Toka are getting divorced in crayon, and it's like the letters are so long that they start bending around the edge of the page. It's just like I love Toka and her whole like weird ways in which she just intersects into the story and kind of throws chaos into everything.
Absolutely.
All right, then we've got Kusaha Togashi, Yuta's mom. Or no, sorry, this is the other sister, who I want to specifically point this out because she's voiced by Fukuhara Kaori, who's Tsukasa from Lucky Star. Not a huge role, but a fun one. And it's just nice to see that actress back again. We have Nano-chan Sensei, who is voiced by Kikuko Inoue, the mom in every anime ever. She's not literally a mom in this. Well, maybe she has a kid, I don't know. But she is a mom. She's the school mom. Which is very good. And then we have, I love this piece of casting because it's so weird given the roles we know this person for. Hoshi Soichiro is Makoto Ishiki, the buddy who shaves his head and all that shit, who is Kira Yamato in Gundam Seed. He's Akachi Goto in Persona 5, and he's Shirazumi Leo, the basically the killer in Garden of Sinners and like the last movie and all that shit. What a outrageously different character than everything else I've seen him in. I had no idea it was him.
Sean, every couple episodes I looked it up again because I'm like, I know this voice really well. I've heard him in maybe possibly 100-hour-long video game and 50-episode TV series we reviewed. And like, I would look it up and I would check and I'd be like, huh. And then I would just forget because like the information just wouldn't stick in my head. I was even rewatching Gundam Seed earlier this year where I like was kind of realizing like, no, he actually is really like my last experience being Gundam Seed Destiny, going back to like original Gundam Seed and being like, nah, he's really good as Kira, but it is like as different a performance from Ishiki as you could possibly get. And it's just, and same with Akechi, same with the killer in Garden of Sinners. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's just such a different character. It's a different quality to his voice. Like, I'm sure he's played other characters like this and other things I haven't seen before. Yeah. But it just was very funny when I looked it up. It's like, it's fucking Kira from Gundam Seed? Like, holy shit, okay. And then the last one I want to shout out because because the G Gundam connection here is we have Amino Yuri, who plays Yuta's mom, who is also Rain in Mobile Fighter G Gundam, and also Keiko in Yu Yu Hakusho. It's not a particularly huge performance in this. I mean, it's a funny character when she comes in, because she's only in a few scenes, but every time she's in, I do love the whole vibe that Yuta's mom has. And I love the weird detail that his dad is in like Jakarta or some shit, and yes. there is a very funny little moment where the mom comes out and he's like on the balcony or whatever, and she says, there's a chance that Jakarta, dad's going to be in Jakarta for another year and we might have to move out there, and you just goes like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm like, that feels like a really big piece of information you should maybe actually like try to digest. But yeah, I love like Yuta's whole like home life is very funny, and Amino Yuri's a very good voice actress, so it was cool to see.
It's also kind of funny that two things she's famous for are Yu Yu Hakusho and G Gundam, because those both I feel like are kinds of shows that are touchstones for the crazy action sequences here.
Oh, absolutely, yes, 100%. Yeah. There's the because Yu Yu Hakusho, obviously you get all the Hiei stuff. Mobile Fighter G Gundam is. If Gundam had a Chuunibyo phase, that is what Mobile Fighter G Gundam is. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, Domon Kashu is the most Chuunibyo Gundam hero.
Yes,
absolutely. And I'm almost surprised now, thinking about it, that no one says Shining Finger in this show. I'm like, if Tomokazu Sugito was in this show, he would have been the one to say it. But someone, I'm surprised, did not say Shining Finger at some point in this series.
Yes, maybe I don't remember if season 2 has a reference, but it does feel like a thing that specifically Yuta would have said in 8th grade, is he would have gone, yes. This hand of mine glows with an awesome power. Its burning grip tells me to defeat you.
I want to go watch G Gundam now. Anyway, all right. So back to like kind of the show itself. I don't think we need to go through episode by episode, but like what things from the episodes do we want to cover before we wrap up today?
I want to shout out some of my favorite jokes in the first couple of episodes, because there's some very good ones. We talked about the they got 2 to 3 of my ribs scene, which is very funny. There's a line, I just love this little exchange so much, in Japanese in particular, where Rika says this line, Yami no Reiko no Kyotsuru Tamashi no Soulmate, which is like, where she just takes like 3 different ways of saying the word soul, Reikon in Japanese, Tamashi in Japanese, and soulmate in English, and Yuta just hears it, just goes, like, that's a lot of souls. And I love that. There's the whole part in episode 1 where Rika puts the Konami code into the vending machine where she goes like up, up, down, down, left, right, BA. And then on the train, she explains to Yuta that B is for banana and A is for apple. But sometimes, depending on the season, they change up the location. So you got to be careful. And it's like, it's so good. I just love all the dumb shit that Rika does in the first couple episodes. Very, very funny. You have
the
moment?
gif of Rika opening the train doors from Sakugaboru, which is just because all it is her holding up her hand at the correct moment with the doors are guaranteed to open because that's how the train works. But like it is animated it's not like they've added any detail that wouldn't actually be there in the moment if you look at the shot, because it would create that like little burst of like wind around her and all that. But it is just such a good piece of animation to show how she uses the like mundane world around her to be fantastical. It's a shortcut, but it is so well done. And it even makes Yuta kind of take a step back and go like, what is this girl? It's great.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. In episode 2, there's a bunch of good stuff. Episode 2 is where you have all the stuff where Rika has a calculator taped up outside her apartment door that she uses to pretend to like put in a code, which is funny. And that's where you get all the scene of Yuta visiting her room where she says this great line, "Welcome to Dark Side. Konto naru kaose yokoso." Which is like, welcome to Dark Side. Welcome to the chaos that is chaotic is basically what she says, because she just takes the Japanese word for chaos and the English word chaos. And then once again, Yuta's just sort of exasperated by all this shit. And this is also where she has like the most legendary fucking teenager excuse for not cleaning up her room, where she says, "Incidentally, the placement of everything in this room is placed as ordained by astrology. So therefore moving them is strictly forbidden and I do not have to clean up."
I'm going to use that now when...
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an adult. I should... Never mind. Forget I said that.
Yeah.
But, my brother is listening to this and he's seen my room and he's made fun of me for it. Thomas, it's all astrology.
Yes, it's all ordained by astrology, therefore moving any of it is strictly forbidden, or it'll, disrupt the spirits.
Also, all the cuts in that episode of the big fight between Toka and Rika out in the park, you could just cut some of those into an episode of a various Ufotable Fate Stay Night adaptation, and I don't think anyone would bat an eye. I think the fucking animators from Ufotable would go like, "Oh, we did that one right." It's just, like, particularly there's the one where she bites her finger, gets the blood, makes the blood like this gelatinous thing, like, flying off in the corner, and then it expands into this, like, multi-tiered battle system. That is, like, such a perfect Fate Stay Night cut. It feels like Shiro, starting the Unlimited Blade Works or something, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, and all the stuff in that of, like, Toka just sort of, like, stalking them through the woods, like, by where the playground is and stuff. Because it does, since Fate Stay Night is set in contemporary Japan, it does feel like Lancer going after Shiro or something at the beginning of that series. Yeah, it's all that stuff is just incredibly good. Episode 3 has one of the all-time great gags in this show. This is, like, the best Nano-chan sensei, which is all the stuff of... Nika and them are trying to set up the club, and Nika, in order to like justify all this stuff, is saying that like she's been like has alternate personalities, so that the way they should be allowed to hold the club, even though they don't have enough members, because her other personality will count. And so that's when she goes into like a trance, and then she says, "I am Catherine. Hello, nice to meet you." And Nana-chan says, it just goes, "What do you think of Rika?" One more time. "What do you think of Rika?" "Oh, yes."
It's unbelievably funny. It's one of the best Kikako Inoue line deliveries ever, is her English there of "What do you think of Rika?" Oh my god, it's tremendous. Yeah, I died at that scene.
So good. I just love how like you could tell the whole time Nana knows exactly what is going on. She knows what she's doing. And it's just like slowly manipulating them. It's so good.
It's phenomenal. Yeah. Episode 4 is the one where you get the reveal of Nibutani is Mori Summer and that whole thing. And it's screamingly funny. Through the first 3 episodes, you think Nibutani is sort of the sort of conventional like person of romantic interest, the conventional crush, because she's the hot girl on the cheerleading team and all of that stuff. And after this one, I don't think Yuta thinks about her in that way one more time because she is a very weird Chuunibyo who is even more deep in denial about it than Yuta is, and is trying to get her Mabinyon, however you say the fucking weird book that she has that Dekomori has made copies of. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, all the stuff of like the online culture stuff that she went and she wrote this whole weird treatise of her like weird spiritual philosophy, and that Dekomori has made multiple backup copies and all this stuff. That whole thing is amazing.
You mentioned the astrology stuff earlier. I do love in a later episode when they go to her room and you see all her books, you realize she actually hasn't changed. She's just like diverted it into a different but related set of interests, and she is equally obsessive about that. I think that's one of the great character details that Nibutani cannot really change.
Yes, and I love all the stuff of her, like, the fact that she got like kind of scouted by the cheerleading club, but then she ultimately sort of like throws that off because it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with all these fucking people. And the exact same thing happens later with the acting club. And I love that, she clearly really enjoys being with the Far East Magical Research Society or whatever, and like is able to sort of, metaphorically let
Far
her
East
hair
Magical
down.
Napping Society, summer thereof.
Yes,
get it
thank
right,
you.
Sean.
But she likes being in this weird group. Even if she's not going to sort of like let that on, because she just gets to be herself. And when she's with everybody else, she has to put on this whole weird character, which, as she kind of identifies near the end when she gives that little speech to Yuta, that's just the same thing. That's like its own version of Chuunibyo that she has now put on herself. It's just a different character. But like the fundamental concept is not actually particularly different. Like all that kind of whole arc you follow with her that sort of starts in episode 4 is so good.
Yeah, no, I love her. I love all of that stuff. Episode 5 is the one where we have all the stuff in the pool, where because Rika is almost failing her. This is one of the best episodes overall. It's probably my favorite of these first 6, is where Rika has to take the makeup exam for her math, or else the club will get disbanded. But as part of that, she like negotiates this deal for them to go clean the pool. But instead of cleaning the pool, they just have a day play fighting. And it is the most spectacular animation. The cut that you linked here, Sean, on Sakagoboru is when Dekomori is like riding the hose wave over and spinning her like twin tail to fight against Nibutani, and it is like one of the most spectacular action cuts I've ever seen in anything, to the degree where like I'm not entirely sure technologically how they even did it. The first cut is just a static background with her coming at the camera, which is a crazy piece of animation, but I can technologically understand it. The second one is doing some kind of CGI manipulation, but I can't even really pin down what it is. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's a really phenomenal sequence. That's like one of those where it feels like Clannad, where like it reminds me of, there's that one shot in Clannad when in the baseball episode where it's that first person shot from the perspective of the baseball. You watch this like, how the fuck did these people even do this? But yeah, there's so much good stuff in that episode 5, because that also has the whole thing of where Rika's practicing her times tables, and they're like make this whole joke about how like the 7s are like the hardest ones to remember, and it's even harder if you put the 7 first, that like 7 times 3 is harder to remember than 3 times 7. I don't know if I really fully agree with that, but maybe that's just like a thing. And you have this whole like weird like Dragon Quest like thing, like this 8-bit NES version of a game that you see. And then I love that one of the strategies that Nika has to try to remember her math stuff is she tries to give the problems different names. So she calls 7 times 3 evil clown. It's just so fucking ridiculous. And then when later Yuta's trying to make her study, she like has this whole thing where she's always like, I can't solve this, I can't figure it out. And then the camera shows the paper and she's just drawn the evil clown guy, and she goes like, I can't understand, what is he thinking, like what's going on behind this mask? Like, what an insane way to try to learn math, is try to like dissect the psychology of this evil clown character you've invented. And then this is also the one where you get all the stuff with the email addresses. So you see that Yuta's address is Divine Exceed Freya Magna at siftbank.ne.jp. And then at the end of the episode, because Nika had a totally normal one, which is like Nika 06 at whatever. He gives her the name Black Raisin Detra, and him explaining what that means in Japanese and all this shit in the Dark Flame Master voice is incredibly funny and good.
And that is what they credit the 4 actresses singing the theme song as.
Yes.
In the end credits. So Inside Identity is credited to Black Raison d'etre, which I think is a great little touch. It's a great joke. Did KyoAni set up these as email addresses that you could actually email and do a fan club thing? Because I feel like if they didn't, they were missing some kind of opportunity.
Yeah, I have to imagine there's something like that, because they did have a whole website and do some of their promotional stuff for the show. So yeah, but yes, this episode in particular, episode 5, which that's an Utsumi Hiroko one, which, I assume she's destined to do swimming pool episodes because she's, of course, the woman who does the free series. So if there's a pool, you got to get her in there.
Indeed. She's going to be spending a lot of time in animated pools shortly after this show aired, because I think Free is done now, but it did a lot before it wrapped up. It's one of the only big things where it's currently not planning on covering this season. I'm never saying never at this point, because we've gone off the fucking deep end, but, who knows?
Then episode 6, this is the Kigami Yoshiji one, which this is kind of I think interesting if we're thinking about the pacing of the series, because I feel like episode 6 is half a comedic episode, but it's also half setting up the dramatic side, because there's a couple of key moments in this one. I mean, one, this episode just is so fucking well directed, and just the shot choices are so good. The characters are so well animated. Again, you do not need to be told that this is a Kigami Yoshiji episode. You just watch it, you're like, oh my god, the animation. Even though, again, this is not, I think, the best episode, because the plot is kind of fine. It's the one where it's mostly about Ishiki's note being found and him having to shave his head, which is funny, but it's not as sort of substantive as episode 8 or 10 or whatever in terms of the plotting. But if you're just going purely on the shot composition and stuff like that, oh my god, this episode is amazing. And then you have this whole big sequence in the middle of this episode where they're talking outside at near these train tracks. And you have the sequence where Dika is standing there, and she's just sort of basically doing the thing she'd been doing before with the train doors, where she goes the wind is coming, and then the train comes by, right? And she's just timing that while everyone else is off on the side having an actual conversation. Then once that conversation is over, Yuta gets up and walks over to Dika. They stand there by the train tracks as a train is coming, and she goes and grabs his hand. You have this amazing sequence in slow motion as the train is going past and the lights of the train are rushing past them, and the camera is just showing you slowly Yuta's reaction. Dika's standing there. You have this great shot of their legs, and then the shadows where both of them have 2 shadows projected from the different lights coming off the train, and the shadows slowly rotate around the ground as the train is going by. And they're just this moment of the two of them standing there holding hands as this train passes, that it's like a 45-second scene or something, just with no dialogue, just watching this until the train goes past, it lets up, and then she lets go of his hand and they go walking on. And I feel like it's this one little moment that's sort of this harbinger of where their relationship is going to develop past this point.
Yes, and I think in general this episode has the shape of one of the first 5 purely comedic ones, but I think it is tinged, and I think some of this is Kigami Yoshichi's direction. I think very wisely knowing where the story is going to go, that it's just imbued with a little more melancholy, and sometimes it's just a little bit, but I do think on the Ishiki side of the story of the kind of shame he winds up feeling for this shitty thing he did to all the girls, some of it is very funny. There's this kind of I am Spartacus dimension to it by the end, where all the boys applaud him, because it really was all of them did this shitty thing, but he takes the heat for it. But also the little bit of kind of melancholy or dimension to it, where it's you kind of feel the weight of teenage emotions, where everything is the most important thing in the world. The whole idea that he was all excited because this girl left him a note. But then because of the reveal of his notebook, he never finds out who left it, although we're pretty sure it's Nibutani by the end, and all this stuff. Like, I just, I think some of that it helps to create kind of the hinge point into the next two that is the big two-parter that kind of shifts the series, where I think it's getting us to think about these characters on a slightly more grounded plane, even though there's plenty of other crazy stuff going on in this episode.
Yeah, I think you're right, that there is, like, because even the comedy, like, part of the comedy is that it's playing up those emotions. So there is, like, this kind of earnest melancholy there, and then there is also this sort of, like, ridiculous version of it where we as viewers kind of know that this is very silly stuff, but the characters are taking it very seriously. And you have that great scene where Ishii is going to have Yuta shave his head, and they have this incredibly dramatic conversation, like, Ishiki's going to go get executed or something like that. As they're both, like, looking out the window at, like, during the sunset or whatever. It's, it's shot in the color palette and stuff. It's like, the penultimate episode of KyoAni season 2, where it's like they're all going to graduate and shit like that. It's like, it's got that tone and that aesthetic, but it's just very silly thing. And you do have, I love this moment so much, of where afterwards, Yuta comes out and he's got a mask on, he's got these gloves, he's holding them up like he's performed surgery. And yes. I love that, it's like the attitude around it is very funny. And then, of course, you have the reveal of the most perfectly bald, shaved head there that reflects the light from the summoning circle that Kumin is completely entranced by, that then sets up that sort of whole subplot in the second half of where Ishiki falls in love with her because she rubs his funny shaved bald head.
Yes, it's so good. And also sets up the dynamic in the final 6 of just the most incredible attention to detail on his hair slowly growing back with each episode. That just, like, there's a reason you don't see anime characters get haircuts that often. It's because you want to keep those kinds of elements, particularly hair, consistent episode to episode. And of course, it's not super complex. He has a buzz cut. But I do like that they do have to subtly alter the character design in every single episode going forward. And it's very well done.
Yeah. Very well done. And again, just, oh my god, the shot choices and the composition in this episode are just, it's so good. I'm just looking through my screenshots.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's just, holy shit, Kigami Yoshiji. Oh my god.
He spoils us every single time. Episode 7 and 8, I think these kind of come out as a bit of a Trojan horse because you're doing the summer trip to the beach, and you kind of think you know what you're going to get out of that. Like, I certainly was thinking of the KyoAni beach episodes that are consistently some of the most silly episodes of KyoAni and most purely comedic. And certainly you can imagine a really great piece of comedy in that same vein from Love, Chuunibyo, and Other Delusions. And you get a little bit of that here. You get it with some of the other girls like Mori Summer and Deko Mori riding on each other's backs and all of that stuff and getting sunburns. And, that's always fun. But it's very quickly, I think, clear that that's not going to be what these episodes are because Rika is usually our prime source of comedy and she's completely detached. And so when we finally get into all of that, I think it does it very well. I think 7 and 8, particularly the division between the two, and then where 8 goes in almost like the anime version of like the Richard Linklater Before trilogy, where episode 8 is really just the two of them kind of wandering after that initial conversation and just spending time together with no real direction. And it's just one of my favorite KyoAni episodes we've watched so far. But 7 is obviously very important in setting that up and getting us to that point.
Yeah, because 7 is I like you described that Trojan horse effect, because yes, I think you come into it with your kind of beach episode expectations, and it ends up being this really dramatic turn, because this is where Yuta learns about Rika's father and all of that, and they go and run away. And you get the reveal at the end of the empty plot that is going to be sold. That is where her house was, which is just a gut punch reveal where she's so excited to get back there, only to learn that it's not there anymore. And it's also interesting that this episode, sort of like, it sort of echoes or is the origin of the thing that it's echoed in the last episode, I guess, where you have the whole sequence of them escaping from the room, which is also the thing that happens in the last episode again. And I think there's kind of like this false climax that happens here, where it feels like, like we've learned what the big problem is. We've come here and we've broken Rika out of her room, and we're going to go take her to where her dad's house was. And this is going to like fix this if we can get her there. I think is kind of like a little bit what Ryuta's head is at. And then when you get there, you realize this is a much more complicated problem, and it's a 12 episode problem. It's not a 6 episode problem. Like it's not over yet. And I think that's one of those things that makes the structure of the season very effective, is that you get to this point where it feels like a sort of simpler show would have had more, obviously, like random one-off episodes at this point to fill out a whole season, but it would have narratively ended about here. And instead it's like, no, this is the starting point. Now we've just actually started to dig into who this person, Rika, actually is and what's really starting, like, making her tick.
Yeah, absolutely. But I love it. And episode 8 in particular, I love the rhythms of it. I love the unhurried pace once they are off on their adventure together. On their way home, I think you get a real feeling of just how romantic this is going to be. I think like the Linklater comparison is, I made that just because it is about watching two people kind of come together in a very kind of mundane, slow, unhurried pace. Like, I love that bit where you realize that, like, because Toka is a professional chef and probably a bit of a snob about food, Rika never eats convenience store food. Which to me, I was like, that should be considered child abuse in Japan, because convenience store food in Japan is fucking delicious. And so just that moment where they go to the convenience store and they buy some onigiri and they buy some karage, which they translated on the Sentai Filmworks Blu-ray as chicken nuggets, and I was personally offended on behalf of karage. It's fried chicken if you have to translate it at all, but it's truly untranslatable because karage is a magical dish that people need to experience, and it is not chicken nuggets. But anyway, I love that moment, and then I love at the end, I think you get a real hint of how effective the romance is going to be when she comes into his room while he's sleeping and just kind of looks at him and says his name, and then we get the cut to black. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And yeah, there is something very unique about the structure of the episode, because it is this, as you say, it's this kind of journey back, but it's also this very kind of liminal feeling where it's because they're on their own. They're kind of off the register, right? Because there's no adult supervision. They're totally outside of the world of like school, but also the world of like Yuta's parents or Toka. They are totally on their own. The other friends are not here. It's just them on this train. And it does, like, I think there is like a very specific kind of feeling that has when you're that age, when you're adolescent, and you've never really been truly kind of like on your own traveling in that sense, where it's like you're totally unmoored from all the like normal safety nets you have. And it's just a very like, I think it's an experience that everybody obviously has had at some point. And I think that they capture that feeling in the fact that it's happening with both of them at the same time. The only person they have is each other on their way back. It does create this very interesting, unique kind of introspective tone. And you get all these great little moments with the two of them. You get all the stuff where I love Yuta has his whole taxi driver wrist thing with his like plastic gun, which is so ridiculous.
Yes.
And then Rika puts on like some of Yuta's clothes as like pajamas, but they're way too big for her. So she ties up the sleeves and pretends they're like a gi and starts doing all this kung fu shit. And that's where Yuta has like this just great line where it's like, man, you're always able to come up with something, huh? It's like whatever you give Rika, she's able to have fun with. And yeah, that's great. And then you have this moment of her watching this romantic movie on the TV that he comes in and sees as well. And there's like this kissing scene. And it turns this sort of like very chaste friendship these two have, like it slowly starts to become more intimate, and like both of them in different ways realize that they are romantically attracted to this person. And it's a very special episode that's very different, I think, than like any of the episodes we've seen in KyoAni's stuff. Like it has a very different flavor to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, all of them past this point are brilliant. I think 9, 10, 11, 12 are also just absolute knockouts. 9 is another Kitanohara Noriyuki one. And this is the one that ends with the just amazing sequence of them on the roof and Rika almost falling off of the roof and Yuta running down to save her from below, which like, that is like edge of your seat a scene I've seen in a while. Like, it really got me. Like, I know in my head they're not gonna fucking kill Rika at this point in the show, but like, I really did like when she's falling. Like, they are so good at the physicality of these things and making you believe it, that I was like, you know, scooting forward in my chair of like, oh my god, is he gonna save her? How is he gonna save her? It really makes you forget that that's probably not where this show is going, is to have her fall and die 3 episodes from the end. But, you know, it's brilliant.
Yeah, but yeah, that whole scene is incredible, and just like the shots and the color palette, because it's all at sunset and on the rooftop. It made me think a little bit of like, I feel like this scene does a better job at capturing the big splash page at the end of Full Metal Alchemist. That's like my favorite thing in the manga, that the anime did not really kind of capture that, like the huge landscape in the sense of like the horizon stretching out, that feeling of you're on this rooftop and like the world is out there. I feel like the shot choices and the aesthetic of this whole sequence really captures that feeling, and the sense of them being on this boundary, right? And there are all these kind of boundaries of this rooftop and the fence that they're behind, that they're crossing over. It's just so visually rich. And then you get the whole sequence of him coming down, grabbing her legs, where you get all that same great physical animation we've seen before with him lowering her down on her feet. And then you get that shot I kind of talked about before, where you get the hug and she digs her hands into the back of his jacket, and Nibitani watches that from the doorway of the classroom, and you see the shot over her shoulder looking at them through the window, which there's something about that kind of voyeuristic quality of it, makes it feel even more intensely intimate in this weird way. And then you get this amazing, cool fisheye lens shot from below. That's this 360 shot around them as they're hugging. That kind of closes out the episode. It's just a masterful sequence.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And actually, you know what? Here's something I had in my notes that I wanted to talk about, since I made the joke about Rika dying here. I was thinking about, like, what are the American equivalents of a story like this? And it started to occur to me that they all wind up with the girl who is weird somehow either dying or being negated from the world around her. My reference at like my age with the books that were out when I was a kid were like Bridge to Terabithia, which is about a girl who makes a boy believe in a fantasy world and then she fucking dies at the end, brutally. Or like Stargirl, where she's cool, but then she gets bullied until she has to fucking leave school. And I was thinking, like, there is a weird kind of mean streak in American fiction where the person who comes into the school and, like, makes the boy or whoever the character is kind of open up and believe in fantasy or something has to be negated in some way by the end. And it isn't true of just this show, but I think a lot of anime, that character is allowed to live and, like, flourish. I don't know. I feel like there's something there that someone should write an academic paper on, because there's something interesting to me about that tension.
You're definitely right, because it is, even today with like more modern YA fiction or young adult fiction, that's still like the cliche. It's still the tendency that you're right. Like they either die or something like that happens that sort of like gives this more kind of tragic quality. Whereas here, this show is much more about resolving this, of where the things that make her unique retain, and she's been able to like work through the tragedies or like the grief or whatever that has been kind of holding her down. And yes, there's a much more uplifting quality to this than you typically get in the American version of this story, for sure.
Because definitely when I was joking, like, oh, she wouldn't die falling off that roof, I'm like, but that is what happens in Bridge to Terabithia.
Yes.
That is, she just fucking falls in the river and dies. I was like, there's a meanness to a lot of those stories. Like, when you think about it, all the like heartwarming books you read as a kid, you know, they shoot Old Yeller, the fucking Where the Red Fern Grows, it grows over the graves of the dogs. It's like all of them have to end with like the fun being negated from the world. And I think part of what makes this also feel modern is that that's not the message of it. The message is that the fun can survive. Maybe it has to be modulated, but it is something vital for life. It is not something you do not have to go through the rite of passage of shooting Old Yeller in the back of the head to become a man.
Yes.
Anyway, I know that's kind of we were off topic, but
yes.
Yes,
because I want to talk about episode 10 here, which is my favorite episode. This is Takemoto Yasuhiro coming in and doing just an absolute banger. So this episode is very interesting for a couple of reasons. One of them being, so this is the the confession one. So this is where Yuta and Rika hook up. I think one of the most interesting things about the episode is that happens at the midpoint. Because usually that's the thing that happens at the end. You have a whole story that's building up to, one or both of them confessing to each other and then ending up in a romantic relationship. But that's the midpoint. And then, which all happens the night before the culture festival. And then the whole second half of the episode is basically you missed the whole culture festival, which I think is interesting. They kind of allied that whole thing because it cuts past it. But you have, Yuta is confronted with this dilemma of what is best for Rika? Is it things continuing as they are, or he has this whole conversation with Toka, and then he later meets Rika's mom. Is what needs to happen she needs to be with her family and repair those relationships because he can't necessarily replace those for her, and he doesn't know how to deal with that, which is it's a fucking lot to put on some 14-year-old boy's shoulders. Yes. To sort of figure out what is best to do for this girl. And you have this very complicated ending to the episode of Rika singing this song that was her dad's favorite song or whatever at the culture festival, and then taking off her eye patch and revealing that the Jao Shingan, her colored eye contact lens, is not there anymore. And it's so interesting because I just can't think of an episode that's structured quite like this, where they do what feels like the climax at the midpoint and then throw everything that climax implied about the relationship into question and sort of immediately sort of goes, okay, but is this actually what needs to happen? Or where do we go from here? Is there, because them just sort of hugging is not going to solve the problems that are here. And I think the way it complicates everything within this one episode is very interesting to me.
But it has to do that. That is
yes.
that is why this show is so smart. I think it is so smart to structure itself that way, because the first half of episode 10 is one of the most swooningly romantic things I've ever seen in an anime. It is, you've got the insert song, you've got all the lights at night on the horizon, you're under the bridge, they have their little pinky swear. It is, one side of Takamoto Yasuhiro just at his absolute peak of that, I think, just the visual splendor. There's a lot of Hyoka in that, in the first half of that episode.
Specifically, that scene reminds me a lot of the last big scene at the end of Hyoka. That, it's sunset and pinks and oranges and stuff in terms of the color palette. And this, it's a lot more of these kind of blues and greens of the light from the city. But it's a similar use of color and framing, and the emotional texture of it is so rich and powerful, a lot like the ending of Hyoka, for sure.
Yeah. But if that were the end of the episode and you waited a week for the next one, or even, you just had to go to the next one on the DVD, whatever the case, there would be kind of a break that would, I think, let that sink in as a certain status quo or reality, when the kind of point of this episode in this juncture of the story is that it kind of can't be, at least the way things are working now. And so it is immediately interrupted by Yuta having to think about kind of the bigger picture and, what responsibilities he has both to Rika and her family, and what he wants for her and what she wants and all of these things. And it's very, very fraught. And I think because it happens within the same episode, you really feel, I think, for Yuta, you feel the fraughtness of his emotions throughout this second half, leading up to, how shitty he feels having not done the skit with her and all of that. And then when she does the song and takes off the eye patch, that sense of surprise. And so you kind of have two parallel tracts of a forward momentum in their characters that converge within this episode. And it makes for an absolute powerhouse. It reflects so many sides of the complicated emotions this show is getting at. And just, I feel like it's another elevation. I think episodes 7 and 8 are one level of elevation, and then this pushes it to another level again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so many of the shots in this are incredible. You have all the stuff of them under the umbrella together. You also have them eating at Eck-Donald's. There's a fake McDonald's which has EC Donald's, and it's a green arch that's sideways, so it looks like an E, which I do find that incredibly funny.
I do. Sometime someone who knows Japanese law better than me needs to explain, is it actually a copyright thing that they need to change all these logos? Or is it just that people making anime find this stuff fun? Because I often think it's the latter, just the way you get your Sannies and your Toshobas or whatever it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And then this is one of the most just cheeky, because It's still copyright infringement. It's the exact McDonald's like typeface and arch and everything. It's just with the M flipped to an E. I fucking love it. It feels like if there were a law about this, this is like begging a lawsuit, like poking at the bear, not actually trying to avoid it.
Yeah, I think it is mostly that they just find it fun, right? Because you have like, you know, there's just a lot of jokes like this in stuff of where a character will say like the name of like they'll say Gundam, but then like one of the syllables will be bleeped out and they'll show a mosaicked Gundam on the screen.
Yes.
Where it's like, you know, it wouldn't have been illegal for them to just say it, but it's more it's funnier to be like, we're getting away with something. Like they don't want us to just reference Gundam, but we're going to do it anyways. Like that's a better joke. It's like how bleeping out a swear oftentimes is funnier than just leaving it in. I think it's the same kind of thing.
But I would love to eat at McDonald's.
Yes, me too. McDonald's sounds great. But yes, you have all that stuff. You've got all the confession scene, which I love of I think this is the shot that Jonathan, you texted me about. The like, make sure you get the screenshot. I'm like, man, I screenshotted this episode yesterday. And it's like, just don't worry, I've already got it.
It's the one, if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing on screen right now, which is her, Rika, with her head against Yuta's back, and they are framed under the bridge against the lights in the horizon. Just, it's fucking unbelievably incredible. And then if you've seen the rest of the show, it's a very clear visual echo of what's going to happen in episode 12 with the invisible boundary line reveal.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And then you have all the stuff. I love Yuta has this one line of where he's explaining like why he's doing what he's doing or has done with Nibitani, right? Like why did he sort of force Nika to confront this Chuunibyo thing, which I think it's smart that they don't show us that scene. They don't show us the actual conversation he has with her. You just get a brief flash of it, but you just get the gist of it. Because I think it'd be hard to like actually show it. I think it'd be almost like too brutal to like actually see it. But he explains why did he do this, and he says, you know, that bento, the lunch that Rika's mom gave to him to give to Rika, it was so heavy, it was so full. And then that's coupled with a shot where you see the bento as Rika has opened it up and is looking at it, and it's just stuffed full with all these really like elaborate foods and stuff. And there's some like karaage in there, these mochi with little sakura petals on them. And I think like there's something about that of him realizing for the first time, you know, that there is this whole bigger thing in her life that he can't fix on his own, that like he's not enough to just fix it. Like he can't just go in there and because they're dating that then means that her relationship with her mother is solved, or that he has like a place to like replace that relationship. Like he can't do that. And I think that there's that scene and that conversation with Nibitani, I think it's just so well written to express this very complicated thing that Yuta is dealing with having to figure out like what is the nature of their relationship, what is his place in her life, and what place is appropriate for him to assume in her life, versus like what is just helping her run away from and escape these problems that he knows she needs to confront. There's just a lot of very heavy ideas that are contained in this very, I think, like simple dialogue that's super effective.
Yeah. Episode 11 is the most heartbreaking episode of the show because it is where we have Rika completely like, you know, sublimating her Shingon persona and all of that. But also, I feel like Deko Mori is kind of the star of episode 11, where you have, you know, the person who is, she keeps coming in and trying to get Rika to play along. We have kind of a repeat of the train scene from episode 1, but with Deko Mori being the goofball and Rika just not playing along. And then the ending, and you grab the shot on Sakagaboru of Yuta just laying into Rika verbally with kind of everything, or laying into Deko Mori with everything he, like, I think maybe once upon a time wanted to say to Rika but never did, and is thinking now, and breaking her heart. And it is genuinely hard to watch. It is one of the best animations of a character like breaking down and crying I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's so brutal, because you know that like Yuta doesn't believe what he's saying, right? Like the way he's like drawn in those moments is so like intense. You know that he's yelling at himself and he's frustrated himself for not knowing how to help Dika or what to do, because he sees, and I think this whole episode is about that, like everyone sees that what's going on isn't working, that it's gone, that they have over adjusted, they've gone too far, that she's containing herself too much. And, there's just this very sort of repressed and sort of pent up quality to this whole episode where the whole episode is like Yuta and Rika wanting to be able to say something to each other, and they can't. And so they're just sort of almost speaking in platitudes. And Dekomori and Ebitani are both sort of frustrated about it, and are kind of prodding at the situation, but neither of them really know what to do because they're not the people involved. And so, that all explodes in this big ending scene, where he just absolutely lays into Dekomori and she breaks down into tears and runs away. And then he starts crying, saying no, that's not what I wanted to say. It's a very hard scene to watch in some ways because Dekomori is such a nice little kid. You don't want to see her. Yeah. Don't want to see her have to go through that stuff.
It's also one of those moments where you remember, even though Dekomori acts like the biggest, baddest person around, she is the youngest character in the cast. And so this is him bullying a kohai, effectively. Yeah. And then episode 12 is another contender, I think you could say, for the best in the series. It's clearly like 8, 10, and 12 are the big ones. And this is just such a perfect series finale. I wrote about it quite a bit in this section of the dissertation I was talking about. I love every bit of it. There's some of the writing in this one I think is so beautiful. The moment at the beginning of the episode where you have Rika kind of going through her memories of when her father died, she has this one line that blew me away where she says, "It didn't feel real at all. My heart hadn't caught up to it." And I feel like that's the whole theme of the entire show for her, is this idea of, her heart has not been able to catch up to this terrible thing that has happened, and she's effectively never grieved it, I think, is the problem. And that is what Yuta, like his heroism in this episode, is coming to realize that precisely is the thing he can help her with and he needs to help her with. And that is what he does in the big, grand, swooning romantic gesture at the end of the show, is really using her own proclivities for fantasies and Chuunibyo-dom to let her fantasy become a lens through which she can actually grieve, and realizing that these things can be united, not separated. In fact, separating them just makes it worse.
Yeah, and because you have this whole structure of that episode where it opens with this kind of scene you're talking about where because there's two scenes where it kind of flashes back to the death of the father and kind of the aftermath of it. But it opens with this scene at the funeral that then goes to this moment where they tell her, reach out, this is the last time, that the family can, see the body or whatever, reach out to this casket. And she starts to reach her hand out, and then that cuts to her in the present day with her mother at the grave, where she reaches out and touches the grave, and she says, "It's so cold." And then the mother's like, "Oh, let's clean it." And they do the traditional thing where they have this sort of wooden ladle thingy that you use to pour water over the grave to wash it. But you see in that moment where it's Rika's, it's still not real to her at that point. It's still this grave isn't her dad to her. The symbolism of the grave and all that stuff is not affecting her. And then you get the second scene later in the episode of the flashback to afterwards, or I think actually technically this would be earlier, before the funeral, where her mom and sister are grieving, and she has the line you just talked about of her heart hasn't caught up yet. So I love that framing where you have this thing of, you have these sort of symbolic things, the funeral, the gravestone, these things that for most people are things that we do as a society to help people process their grief and try to get some version of closure and to sort of work through those emotions to represent this loved one who has passed on. And for Rika, those things have not worked. They have not done that. They're cold, they're foreign, they're empty to her. And what has meaning to her is this fantasy, is this much more spiritual idea of the invisible boundary lines, of this line that exists that can connect her to this other place where her dad is, which is obviously that's just the afterlife, right? It's just a much more sort of modern, fantastical anime-y version of the afterlife. But it's a thing that she needs to access to connect to her father, which is these beautiful lines of lights on the horizon that to her is that boundary line that then Yuta is able to open up by doing the whole, denying the real, blowing up their synapses, banishing the world, and banishing the world that they exist in to touch this other place. And that's where you get this just unbelievably heartbreaking sequence of seeing these images of Rika as a little girl and like as a baby, that they go like kind of backwards in age, to her, as a little baby in her father's arms. And then you see her dad in this white space. He mouths something that we can't hear, and she starts crying, and then she says, sayonara, like goodbye. She's able to finally say goodbye to her father. And I think that the way in which we see that this is what she needs to be able to process this grief in a way that is real to her, because she is a little weird. She's different than other people. The ways that normal people process their grief does not work for her. And everybody in her life, her sister, her mother, like her grandparents, all these other people insisting, no, like you have to deal with it. You have to move on from it. You have to accept it. Like that's not going to fucking work, because it's like she needs to find a way to process it in her own way. And Yuta is the only person who sees that and can do that for her. And so that whole conclusion, it's so powerful because they've set up that idea through visual language and symbolism and steady character development so methodically.
Yeah, I think the moment that just absolutely blew me away in terms of this show pulling off something I did not expect at the beginning is when he starts saying the absolute nonsense trio of lines, be destroyed real, blow up synapses, vanishment this world, which for the first, 11 episodes, frankly, are just a joke. They are supposed to sound like gibberish words that Rika has put together, same way as her like Schwartz prototype number 3 and all this stuff. But when he says it in this moment, be destroyed real, blow up synapses, vanishment this world, it's like the most serious real thing ever. It is what he is doing. He is saying it's okay, block out this real shit, vanish this world, see the world as you see it. And in this space, you can grieve. You can do what you need to do. That turn is absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's such a powerful climax. So much so that like I think it's interesting because the show like ends here. You have this like little sequence where you get Hochu Otsuka, who comes back. He does some intro narration at the very beginning where he gives us the description of what Chuunibyo is. And then here he comes back right at the end. With this beautiful little speech talking about, basically that this is what everybody is. Everybody deals with this. Everybody is like this at different points in their life. And it basically ends with the line, like, everybody is a Chuunibyo. And then you get this one little recap moment of where you come back to the apartment. Rika's there on the balcony. She's got her eye patch on and she says, do you want to see my eye? And then that's the end. And it's like, this show just sort of like, it hits the ending. And it's like, bam, we're done. You do not get some sort of huge, montage of all. You get a little bit of like a montage of the characters while Hochiosuke is doing his thing, but you don't kind of reset to a status quo or something, which is what you usually get of all of them back at the school and all of that kind of stuff. I like that the show just sort of says, nope, we touchdown. Like, we nailed it. It's over. Like, this is it.
It does. It is to the degree that it makes me kind of surprised they made a season 2 or anything else, because it feels definitive in the way the ending of, the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya feels definitive, or the ending of K-On! Feels definitive, where, like, is there more material they could adapt or more stories they could tell? Of course, there's nothing here that prevents you from telling more stories with these characters, but it feels like an ending on the same order those shows feel like they have had an ending, or Hyoka the same way. Which makes me very curious to get to season 2, because like that's the thing, is it's just such an open question for me. I want to see it and talk about it because this feels so definitive.
Yeah, like without getting into it, my memory of season 2, broadly speaking, is that that's the thing it struggles with. Is like, what really is the story that's there to tell? And it's not that it doesn't have any answers to that question. I remember being kind of not totally satisfied with how that, like, what is the story to tell, and is there really enough meat on those bones? But again, I have not seen that show in 10 years, so who knows? I might really like season 2 now. But that was sort of like my memory of one of the main reasons why I found season 2 disappointing, is partially just because I think I would have liked it a lot more if I had not watched season 1 right before watching season 2.
Yeah.
Because this climax is so good, and it's like the last half of this episode really is burned into my memory. Like, I remember there's a lot of the specifics of the middle part of the show I had not really remembered. Everything from this second half of the last episode of him saying, like, vanishment, this world, and seeing the lights, all of that, it is exactly what I remembered, because it made a really big impression on me when I originally watched it.
Yes. And I do love Hochu Otsuka has exactly 2 pieces of dialogue in this show at the very beginning of episode 1 and the end of episode 22 or end of episode 12. And it's just Kyoto Animation has every, I feel like, older storied male voice actor on speed dial just to get whatever they need them, you know, because we've seen this in the last couple shows. Yeah.
But not for like playing an important role, for showing up for like 15 seconds. It's like, yes. Hey, Ginga Banja, you want to go over here and be in 10 seconds of the same? It's like, yes, I will. It's like, great. And I love it. Because I don't think he hasn't played a like big role, at least in anything we've watched. I don't know, maybe I'll remember if maybe he's in Full Metal Panic or something. I don't remember. But it's like, of all the things we've seen, he just sort of will show up, do a fun little bit in Nichijou, and it's like, okay, I'm going home. And it's like, great. Yeah. Thanks. He's very good.
He is. No, from what I'm seeing, I think this is the first KyoAni thing he did, looking at his credits, he is in the second raid, which I think is KyoAni for Full Metal Panic. He plays Gates. I don't know who that is. But he was not in other Full Metal Panic things. So there you go. But we love him, and he's good. And it's a good closing piece of narration. I just took that closing piece of narration and made it the final piece of my intro. That section is just ending on that narration, kind of leaving it hanging, because I think it says it all. That makes it sound like I plagiarized it. No, I mean, I tell you this is where it's from. Here it is in quotes with a citation, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Anyway, and then we do have the OVA episode, which is, there's kind of 2 flavors of, I feel like, KyoAni OVAs. There is the one that just is from an earlier point in the show and kind of slots in. That's how Keon did it. That's how Hyoka did it. This is the kind of epilogue OVA thing that we've seen a couple of times, where it just happens after where we ended the story. This is actually what the Keon season 1 OVA is. Yes. It's just a little bit after what we had before. And this one is just, it's very fun. It is about Rika and Yuta kind of trying to figure out where their relationship is on Christmas, having a party at Dekomori's mansion. And really the stars of this one are Dekomori and Nibutani, and their crazy rivalry / as we learn by the end, love affair, and learning that Dekomori is just crazy rich, and even when they play their stupid card game, is the rich girl.
Yes. But again, but for me, hands down, the best thing about the OVA is just her ridiculous Christmas outfit is so funny. And you do get that very good joke of where everyone's coming out in like different outfits, and then Rika comes out in like a gym outfit or whatever, and you just like incredibly confused, like, what? Like, what is this? Right? It's like, oh, well, Toka told me this is what you were into. Like, because there's that little bit where she comes out from under his bed and has his, like, dirty mag that he's been looking at.
Oh, yeah.
So I just love the idea that she just sort of snuck this info that there was some sort of, like, gym uniform fetish or something in there.
It's so good. Oh, my God. Yeah, no, it's a good OVA. I think it's a good use of the OVA format. It's funny. I feel like it feels like a realistic depiction of where things would go after the end of episode 12 without, I feel like, undermining that ending at all.
Yes, yeah. It's just, it kind of gives you that little epilogue that the main show doesn't necessarily, like, demand, so it doesn't need to be there, but it's nice to get something that gives you a little bit of, like, decompression afterwards and just sort of spend a little bit more time with the characters in kind of a normal venue. But then you also get the light shorts, which we've kind of talked about a little bit, but I do just want to shout them out because
they're fantastic.
They're very well worth watching if you have not seen them yet. People should seek them out. If you have the Blu-ray, they're on there. But they're kind of tucked away because they're in the special features. So on the disc with the OVA, which the last season 1 disc has all the specials or the shorts in the special features, and it's just like a little extra episode. Like, it's just a bonus little comedy thing of a bunch of skits cut together. And I think the Kumin Senpai one is clearly, I think, the best one, but also you get one that's Yuta when he was in the middle of his Chuunibyo stuff, and then also Rika has one where she was still in middle school with some buddy in middle school, or that's one where she says Hogu. Like, he's like, you told me yesterday you got hit by a noble phantasm, and that's why you have your arm wrapped up.
Yes.
That's just seeing these characters, seeing like a prolonged skit with those characters in that state is very funny. And I like Nika progressively showing up with more and more bandages on until the teacher's just like, Takanashi-san, come over here. We need to have a conversation. Yes. It's like, again, as a high school teacher, I see that. I'm like, yeah, it's like, we gotta, like, you know, step out here for a second. Let me close the door. Like, we're gonna have to have a talk because this has gotten too far.
Yes, no, it's great. I love those. The one that is Yuta in middle school, it's during the height of his Chuunibyo phase, and it's from the perspective of Kuzuha, his little sister.
Yeah.
His, like, middle sister. And it's so funny because she loves her brother, but she also is embarrassed by him. And the end of that is like, I love my brother, but I would prefer a normal brother. And I think that's so funny. There's the moment where because he goes out with his, like, big get up and his, like, long trench coat and his fucking, like, prop shotgun. And then there's a moment where a cop is coming by and he just takes it all off and shoves it in a bush. And then he puts it back on as soon as the cop is gone. I love that. The first of the shorts is called Volleyball, and it is where Rika is really bad at volleyball because she has a fucking eye patch on and no depth perception. So she and Yuta train because she won't take off the eye patch, and she gets really good at it. And then at the very end, they go to class and they've announced that they're switching from volleyball to basketball, and she's just like, oh, and that's the end of it. It was fucking great.
Yeah.
And then the last one is a Dekomori versus Nibutani fight with water balloons that is some great animation. There's a moment where Nibutani from above, from like a classroom window, throws a just massive, like, human-sized water balloon, and Dekomori manages to catch it without it breaking, and then Nibutani fires like a pellet at it and breaks it, and they do like the slow-mo thing, like from one of the like slow-mo guys' videos of the balloon breaking but the water keeping its shape for a moment, which is what happens when you like break a balloon like that. But I've never seen it done in animation that way, and it's just tremendous.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about these shorts. I think it's why I never originally sought them out, is because I think I originally assumed that they were like these little, like, you know, chibi things. Because lots of anime have this. Like, K-On! Has some like this, Haruhi has them, where they're like little 45-second chibi animations. They're like fine, but they're not substantive. And so when you say that, oh, they have some shorts that were on YouTube, that's what my head assumes they are. And it's like,
yes,
I don't need to necessarily go check that out. But this is like, no, I mean, it's as good as anything in the main show in terms of production. They're all like very kind of fun little skits, so there's not a lot of narrative or plot to them. But in terms of just production value, it's just full top quality KyoAni animation. I think that the water balloon stuff is where you most see that, because there's so many great shots there of like where Nibutani does the thing where she like catches it and it's all in slow motion. She's telling herself like, I have to relax, every joint in my body must take on the pressure of this balloon, and now like pull it back, and you know, she catches it and then pushes it back, and the animation, the like the physics of how that works are all like completely on point. So yeah, they're like really good. They really put a lot of effort into making these very substantial pieces of animation.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and I would definitely compare it to the Lucky Star OVA that is just a collection of kind of short bits. This doesn't get quite as adventurous as that one does, because Lucky Star has the craziest thing anyone at KyoAni's ever made in the final 5 minutes, but it is a similar level of sort of short bite quality, and one of my favorite things in this series.
Yeah, I would love if they let Takimoto Yasuhiro do one of the shorts and just turn everybody into like a frog or whatever the fuck happened in that, and like melt in the like in the end of Evangelion weird hellscape, and then just never address it and never reset it to a status quo and just let it hang there. It is truly the most ridiculous thing we have ever seen in anything we've discussed for any podcast ever. The Lucky Star OVA is the weirdest thing we've ever seen.
Well, you know, Sean, there is, for season 2 of Chuunibyo, there's a whole nother set of shorts, of light shorts. So who knows? Maybe we'll get it.
I have not seen those, so, you know, maybe it's there. Maybe my, like, fucking bizarre, weird-ass KyoAni shit will be fulfilled from that. I do not know.
Yeah. So do you want to update the kids on our schedule for the next section of this podcast, since we are going to be adding the other Love Chuunibyo and Other Delusions content?
Yes, so what we're doing here is our Part 5 Kyoto Animation Splendid Isolation for our next few weeks here. Next week, we are covering Tamako Market with Tamako Love Story, which is the movie finale. So we're covering both of those in one episode because Tamako Market's just a one-course show, so that should be doable. Then after that, we're doing Beyond the Boundary, which is the Ishidate Taichi directed show. That's 12 episodes with an OVA. And there is a recap movie. Jonathan, if you want to watch the recap movie, you can. I'm not necessarily planning on watching it.
Yeah.
But there's a finale movie, so we're definitely watching discussion of the finale movie. So at the bare minimum, people should watch the show with the OVA and the finale movie. If you want to watch the recap movie, you can as well. And then after that, we'll be doing Love, Chuunibyo, and Other Delusions Ren, or the second season of the show. And we will be watching the Rika movie for that, the recap movie, since, we've got a couple weeks in there, so you can refresh yourself on it. I'm curious about that one because it feels like it's pitched to be more than just a pure recap movie. So I'm curious to see that. And then after that, we'll be doing Myriad Colors Phantom World, which that's a show I'm very curious to revisit because I remember it being very weird, but in a cool way. So I'm curious to watch that again. And then we'll be finishing off this mammoth 6-episode part that was never originally going to be here, but we'll be finishing off with Love, Chuunibyo, and Other Delusions Take on Me, which is the movie finale for the Love, Chuunibyo, and Other Delusions franchise, which came out in 2018. So that is our massive big boy part 5 part here to our Kyoto Vacation.
Yep, and after that, then we'll be getting into all the Sound Euphonium stuff, and that'll also be a big part. And Violet Evergarden after that. There's a lot of stuff to come, and I am excited for fucking all of it, Sean. We're like only halfway through this journey. It's never stopping. We have broken so many hearts from all the people demanding the Tomino-thon. It's coming one day. I promise. There is a finite amount of Kyoto Animation material for us to get through. It's just we keep adding.
We keep adding because there's so much good stuff, and I am incredibly excited for what we're covering next week because for the first time in a very long time on this podcast, Jonathan, we are watching something that I have not seen and know absolutely nothing about. So next week, I get to go on a whole adventure of discovering some brand new KyoAni for myself because we are going to be watching Tamako Market and the Tamako Love Story.
物語を紡ぐキャリアを手なんで成功してしたいしてなんだろうここのビルが潜れる